A Cowboy for Love, Riverdale Ranch Romance Book Number 5, written by Jewel Allen, narrated by Melissa Connell and Scott Rose. Chapter 1, Tori, Texas. I looked over my shoulder to make sure no one had followed me and shimmied out the restaurant bathroom window. Despite it being a February evening, the air outside the posh hotel was hot as a freshly baked kolache. I perched myself on the window ledge, threw my heels to the ground, and started climbing down a trellis I'd noticed outside earlier. I heard a bored voice saying, "You could have just gotten out through the door." Below me, illuminated by a lamppost in the garden, was a woman in a server uniform. Between her thumb and forefinger was a cigarette stub. "Yes," I said as I reached the ground, but I was trying to sneak out. Her badge said Amanda. Through the haze of the smoke, she eyed my dress with distaste. "You're the daughter of that oil tycoon, aren't you?" "And you're smoking on the job," I sassed back. Her eyes narrowed as she puffed out another cloud. "What are you running away from? Your daddy didn't let you go shopping?" I gritted my teeth. "I was told I'm getting engaged to a guy I don't love. He's announcing it at a party, so I decided to run away." "Rich girl problems," Amanda spat out, dropping her cigarette and crushing it under her boot. From her pocket, she took out a piece of spearmint gum and popped it in her mouth. "Love is for fools." "I beg your pardon?" I sputtered. "Haven't you ever watched a rom-com?" "I have, which proves my point. That's all fiction." She jerked her head towards the hotel. "Is the guy rich?" "His great-great-great-great-grandfather invented the slinky. Or maybe it was just his great-great-great. "Is he good-looking?" She cut me off. "He fills out a tux well," I conceded. "Is he smart?" "His staff exists to make him look smart." "You're not into him." "Am I in love with him?" I thought about it. Did I love Alexander? Love? What exactly was love? I shook my head. "The thing is, I don't think he loves me for me." "Who cares? He wants to marry you, right?" I gave her a pointed glance. "I want to be married for love." She rolled her eyes. "That was my folks' problem. Married for love. Ugh. What's your man's name?" "Alexander Greatcoast V." But Amanda was distracted already, her eyes shifting to her pocket. Before she could take out another cigarette, I sized her up. "You want to make some extra money?" Her eyes flicked my direction. Interest sparked, then died almost instantaneously with her shrug. "Depends." "Trade me clothes?" She looked at my midnight blue sheath and Manalo Blahnik shoes. "No way, and just hear me out." "You have 10 seconds. I need to change into something more practical. Plus, it'll be dark in the party. By the time Alexander figures out he has the wrong girl, the classic switcheroo." Interest sparked in her eyes. "You'd be on a bus to Tijuana. To somewhere, anyway. I was thinking west. How much?" "I haven't any money, but..." "Cheap talk." She made a disgusted sound. "These pumps." I slid off my 3-inch heels. "They're worth almost 1,000 new. I wore them for the first time tonight." She took the shoes from my hands and studied them, her pale, freckled skin creasing into a frown. Too bad she had a nasty smoking habit and a jaded outlook. With her curly red hair gathered casually away from her face, she was a beautiful girl. "Seriously? These ain't worth $1,000. Actually, they're deceptively comfortable and they'll lengthen your legs. Very flattering." She looked at the hotel and then at me, pursing her lips. "I could lose my job over this. They'll say I did you in." "I can write a note. Plus, I won't be gone forever, I think, just long enough to make a statement." "Like save the whales?" She snorted. "Something like that," I murmured. "Save Tori." I chewed the inside of my lip. Every second mattered. "Well?" 2 seconds passed. 10. She averted her eyes, then back. "Is your guy a good kisser?" "Not bad. Why?" She grinned. "Might as well play it up."
Chapter 2. McCoy. Althea was droning on and on about how to check in guests at the Riverdale Ranch B&B. And this is where you'd record the money in the till. McCoy. McCoy. She paused. Are you listening? I tore my gaze away from the chicken coop out back, away from the window, and now I faced my annoyed sister-in-law, but she was too good-natured and couldn't stay mad for long. Are you still worried about Judith? She asked with an exasperated smile. Yeah, I admitted. Put yourself in my shoes. What if your beloved chicken came down with a bad case of dermatitis and she starts molting off her beautiful plume? Wouldn't you be sick with worry too? Didn't you already see Dr. Gowans? Althea was referring to our local vet. I nodded. I hope the wash he prescribed will kick in soon. I'm sure it will. Althea patted my shoulder. I liked her a lot. She was the sister our rowdy group of 6 cowboy brothers never had. Since marrying Sheldon, she'd also taken on the role of mom, with our mother being gone for over a year now. Anyway, she said, I know you want to get back to Judith, but if you could just focus for a minute on how I operate the till. Sorry. For the next few minutes, I listened to Althea and watched where everything went. She had assured me that with Sunny Ridge still in the middle of winter in February, we wouldn't have a ton of guests, but it was still important for me to know how to B&B sit while she and the family were gone. A clattering commenced from upstairs, and her 3 children, Bram, Gabe, and Tammy, carried, or more like lugged, their Disney character suitcases to the main landing. Their pup Bubbles, the basset hound, followed as best as she could on those short legs. Bram was 13, Gabe 12, and Tammy 7, the perfect ages for a first trip to Disneyland, Althea had decided. And when she decided on something, us Brown brothers knew better than to get in her way, just like Sheldon soon learned with her B&B dream. Althea looked on with pride at the kids' scrubbed and glowing faces, kissing their cheeks noisily. The kids pretended to be embarrassed, but they also looked kind of pleased. Althea and my brother Sheldon adopted the kids the year before, but you wouldn't be able to tell they weren't blood-related unless you squinted at them real close. They were one big happy family. Sheldon followed them down the stairs and came up to Althea. He put a long arm around her shoulders. Got everything on the kids' list packed. She melted into him. Oh, Sheldon. Thanks, hon. I don't know what I'd do without your help. Probably do a better job, he winked. Actually, the kids did all the packing, Gabe said. Dad just got to boss us around. Yeah, Althea snickered. You need to lay off some, Sheldon. Yes, ma'am. He tipped his hat. They exchanged this look, like you'd see in one of those corny Hallmark movies. Just please no one tell Althea I called them corny. She was trying to convert us into Hallmark fans with some success because we mostly didn't want to hurt her feelings. I'd sat through one too many of them, and not all were excruciatingly bad. Oh, and can I apologize in advance? My brain is always thinking chickens or eggs when I'm not measuring or building a coop. I was sure they were going to lapse into calling each other honey and snookum, so I intervened. Don't you worry, Althea. Your B&B is in good hands. Althea smiled at me gratefully. Sheldon raised an eyebrow. Remember, we let you bring over the coop in the back so that you're not shuttling back and forth to your house to see your prized chickens. Keep your head on straight, little brother. Little brother. I hated that nickname. Just because I was the youngest of 6 brothers, they all treated me like I hadn't grown into my britches. I was, for the record, 29 years old, so not exactly a spring chicken. I'll keep this bed and breakfast so clean, you'd be able to eat on the hardwood floor, I boasted. Althea drifted by, followed by her brood. She patted my cheek. No food on the floor, McCoy. That would get our food handler's license pulled so fast. I was just fooling. Althea turned to her kids and brought them into a huddle, then pulled in tall, awkward Sheldon. Who's ready for Disneyland? Althea hollered. Sheldon yee-hawed and the kids squealed back and they traipsed out the door into Sheldon's truck. Even Bubbles showed excitement by wagging her tail. Usually she just lay in the sun with her belly offered for a rubbing. With the luggage all loaded up and secured under a tarp, the humans and dog climbed in. They got on their way with some enthusiastic waving, the exhaust leaving a little gray trail of smoke behind. I was happy for them, of course, but for a moment I felt a pang of lonesomeness. I would never in a million years admit that I missed my good-for-nothing brother, but seeing Sheldon and his family leave brought a lump to my throat. They would be gone a whole week, and it would be pretty quiet around here without them. Thank goodness I had Judith and the rest of the brood. And of course there were my other brothers. We all lived close to each other on something like 80 acres. To make Althea proud, I busied myself cleaning up in the B&B, emptying the little trash can behind the counter, buffing the fingerprints on the coffee table, and finally polishing the railing upstairs. All the while I listened for the bell at the front desk just in case, and it did ring to my surprise. I tucked my plaid long-sleeve shirt in on the ready to wow the newly arrived guest. The bell rang again. Impatient, were we? I hollered, "Hold your chickens!" I took 2 steps at a time to be more accommodating. At the bottom of the stairs, I stopped and turned toward the main landing. The sun was shining through the side window and a woman stood in outline. I blinked the light out of my eyes and shaded them, taken aback. Like an angel with her cloud of long hair, a beautiful woman was staring back at me.
Chapter 3. Tori. I don't know what I was expecting in this remote, cold-as-Hades neck of the woods. A matronly woman who would fuss over me, maybe, but not this. A strapping cowboy with the biggest torso muscles bulging in all the right places. He looked like he could start chopping wood while lifting me with the other arm. "Hello," he said. He had shaded his eyes from the glare of the sun, and now I could see them more fully. They were the soft brown color of a felt hat, or like how a puppy's would be, full of warmth and with lots of love to give. "Hi," I answered back through my thawing lips. I expected him to go behind the counter to keep talking to me. That would have been more professional and would have made me feel less self-conscious, but he continued to stare at me while shortening the distance between us by 2 strides. I was sure he would sum me up inaccurately based on the crumpled server uniform. My hair, loose on my shoulders, hadn't been washed and oil-treated in the last 2 days. I hadn't had a shower, nor had I brushed my teeth. Worse was that I hadn't brought a coat. I had woefully underprepared to run away. But he simply said, with that kind expression mixed with a sort of fascination, "What can I do for you?" "Show me your world, cowboy." I cleared my throat. "Yes, please. I'm hoping to find a place to stay." He smiled, bringing the spring weather into the cute little B&B. "You've come to the right place. We happen to have vacancies." No kidding. The parking lot was empty. Or maybe other guests were rambling around in this pretty place. Sunny Ridge, the town sign said, before the bus exited the freeway. He did finally go behind the counter, opening a ledger with flourish. "How would you like to pay today?" My heart sank. I had hoped that we could do a little chit-chat before the subject of money came up. I bit my lip. "That's the thing. I have no money." He did a double take. I could tell he was resisting looking at my clothes, but he did so now for a flicker of a second. "Okay." He looked confused, like he didn't know what to do with me. I swallowed my pride. "I was wondering if you'd let me stay for a week or so. I can work to pay for it." The cowboy scratched his head, looking completely at a loss. "Shucks, I'm not sure I can do that." Other places before here had already turned me down, so this came as no surprise. I hadn't slept very well on the bus, and my body ached all over. A shower would have felt really good. All I wanted was to sit down somewhere and maybe have a good cry. Tomorrow would be a better day. "I would normally not beg," I said, my voice shaky, "but someone stole my money off the bus. My fellow passenger, an older woman, had been so friendly, telling me she would wake me up at the next stop. Instead, I woke up to her swiping my money and disappearing with the rush of people getting off the bus. I didn't discover her theft until we were well underway." The conductor had taken pity on me and let me off the next stop to cut his losses. The cowboy's mouth formed an O, but he didn't say anything. "It's okay," I said, my cheeks warming from humiliation. I knew it was a long shot. I headed for the door and braced myself for the cold. "Wait," I turned. He rubbed his nape. "What can you do?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "You know, to work here." "Oh!" No one else had asked me what I could do. "I could clean," I lied. I hadn't had to clean in my life, but surely it wasn't too hard. Relief crossed his face, and he smiled once again. For a moment, I couldn't remember what we were talking about. He was super cute when he smiled, and it was distracting. Maybe he was already married, but I stole a peek at his ring finger and it was bare. "Perfect." His smile widened. "You can stay." My body buzzed with relief. Thank you, I looked at him expectantly. I couldn't call him cute cowboy to his face. "McCoy Brown." He offered his hand to shake. McCoy. Cute name for a cute cowboy. "Tori." I skipped the last name in case my family put detectives on my trail. I put my hands in his large one. His touch was so warm. It underscored how icy mine was. "Your hands are freezing," he said, astonished. "Well, yeah." Then it was my turn to be shocked. He engulfed my hands in his and rubbed the circulation back into mine for several seconds. It was inappropriate, and yet utterly wonderful. Just what I needed at the moment. I raised my eyes to his, and my heart skipped a beat as a jolt zipped through my body. "Pardon me," he said, letting go of my hands. He looked dazed, just as I felt. Then he jumped into action. "Let me show you your room. No luggage?" I shook my head. Curiosity burned in his eyes. "Travel light?" "Something like that. It was an impulse trip." "From where?" "I'd rather not answer personal questions," I said. I hadn't meant to be so sharp, but my words came out with a bite. "Ah, sorry." He jangled a key attached to a flat piece of wood and led me up the stairs. "You're lucky you got here when you did. You can have first pick of the upstairs rooms." "What's so special about the upstairs rooms?" Again, that cute smile. "You'll see." As we got to the landing, I realized that he and I could very well be the only people in this B&B that looked like it had been converted from a farmhouse. "Are there other guests right now?" "Not today. I have a reservation in a few days. But I do have Judith." Oh, I knew it. An attractive cowboy like him had to have a girlfriend lurking in the background. I wondered what I could do to help in a B&B that wasn't overrun by guests, but I decided it wasn't my problem. Again, that wasn't my concern. The last thing I wanted was to get entangled with a cowboy, though he was easy on the eyes. With a girlfriend named Judith in a town I'd never return to again after this week. I just needed a place to lie low in, to think through my options and hopefully negotiate something better with my family. I followed him to the first door, which he opened. The hall had been dark, and now the sun streamed in. A concerning, drafty chill met me as I stepped into the light, but my worries fell away as soon as I looked into the charming room. It was a space clearly decorated by a woman in a simple, romantic way, with the vintage iron bed and white linen. It could have been the cowboy's handiwork, but somehow I found that hard to believe. Cream wallpaper with a light pink repeating pattern covered the wall behind the headboard. A dresser, chair, and table were stained a light cedar, making the small room more spacious-looking than it actually was. The window along the back of the room intrigued me, and I walked over now. The glass panes were smudged with a cloudy sheen of condensation. I stopped and stared out, a smile spreading across my face at the lovely sight. The town was still in the throes of winter, with barren fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. Where I was from in Texas was fairly flat with some hills, but here in Colorado, farm fields sloped up to blue and gray mountains in the distance. A house popped up here and there, not close enough to discern details, but smacked of home and comforts. Home. I wasn't feeling homesick, but I wanted something like that, some place where I belonged and where I could do what truly made me happy. I blinked back tears and took a deep breath, expelling it with a swoosh out my lungs. "Your town is beautiful." "Wait until you see it in the spring, for reals," he murmured softly. I realized he had come close and was standing behind me. the heat from his body blocking out some of the chill from the room. It was an irrelevant comment because I would never return here in the spring. Sunny Ridge would just be a blip in my life, a refuge from a difficult time. I was sure that I would go back to Texas in no time, once that situation with Alexander was sorted out. That's when calving begins, he continued, and when trees bud, when seedlings turn green, the birds start returning too, and soon there'll be flocks moving across the sky like a painter's brushstrokes. He stepped away and chuckled. Sorry, I know that sounds hokey. Well, yeah, I said, and we laughed, but it's also sweet. I meant that as a compliment, meaning that his words were welcome in a rough and tumble world, but it almost came off like I meant more than that. A prelude to romance. He was eyeing me now, with even more interest. I moved away, pretending to study the pieces of furniture. Did you decorate this place? I have no decorating bone in my body, he said with a lopsided smile. This is my sister-in-law's doing. She and my brother run this bed and breakfast, but they took their kids to Disneyland this week, so I'm running it for them. I love Disneyland, I said, looking out the window again, trying to make out an imaginary California in the distance, had I kept going west. If I had the money, maybe I could have kept going there. From where? I averted my eyes. The cowboy couldn't take a hint. Oh, sorry, he said. There I go again, poking my nose in your business. Anyway, his voice softened. Welcome to Sunny Ridge.
Chapter 4. McCoy. It had all been going well with Tori when suddenly something changed and she didn't give off the friendly vibes I had sensed earlier. One minute she was talkative and then the next it was like her expression shut me down. Which was just as well. The coming spring weather had lulled me into romantic thoughts. When I stood behind her and smelled her sweet perfume, I got thinking of how the flowering trees would blossom after the snows. I left her in the room and went downstairs, thinking all the while that she and I were the only ones in the B&B. It almost made me feel like those times when I wanted to sneak a girl into the hay barn, but knew Mom would find out sooner or later, so I didn't even try. Tori was a guest. I needn't go sweet on her. But with Valentine's Day 2 weeks away, could I help it that I was daydreaming about this beautiful woman sharing my roof? With a sigh, I went back to the front desk and answered a couple of calls. And then there was silence, during which I contemplated how I could have Tori help me with chores. It felt rude to boss her around when she was a guest. A crunch of tires stopping at the gravel lot outside brought me out of my thoughts, followed by my brother Heath's booming voice commanding his Aussies to stay in the truck. Althea only allowed Bubbles the basset hound on the premises, unless if guests had their own pets, then they could come in. The front door opened and Heath entered. For a big man, he moved quiet, probably honed by years of training dogs. The last thing you wanted to do, he once said, was to scare the tarnation out of puppies so they'd have accidents. McCoy? He said, nodding. I nodded back. How'd the contest go? I asked. Heath was always in some agility training competition or another with his Aussies. Good. Missy finished first, Duke bottom last, but he's a youngin'. That shocked me. Heath hated settling for last. Maybe he was getting less competitive in his 31 years. How goes it? Heath asked, looking around. Did Althea put you up to it? He raised an eyebrow. Put me up to what? To check on me? Fine. Yes, she did. Can you blame her? Thanks a lot for your guys' confidence in me. This was along my way, so it was no skin off my... A scream rent the air. Tori. I imagined all sorts of things. A spider on the wall, a raccoon climbing up the window, a fire breaking out from a faulty outlet. Heath and I exchanged concerned looks and I ran toward the stairs. I took the steps to the second floor 3 at a time. You got a guest here? Heath asked as he followed. It was almost unheard of in the bleakness of February. Yes! I strode toward the closed door. I didn't see a vehicle in the lot. She didn't come in one, I don't think. I pounded on the door. "Tori?" I shouted. "Tori!" When she didn't answer, I tried the knob. It was locked. "Are you okay in there?" "Get away from me!" came her muffled reply. An intruder. Someone had broken in. Tori needed my help. I took a few steps back. "What are you doing?" Heath asked, looking at me like I had gone crazy. "It'll take too long for me to run down and grab the duplicate key." With a running start, I slammed my shoulder into the door and busted it open. The room was filled with steam, coming from the slightly open bathroom door. I moved quickly and came to the opening, averting my eyes when I saw that she was standing there in her black polo shirt, which came down just below her hip, leaving her legs bare. Thankfully, the shirt was all buttoned up. "Get out!" she was saying to someone past the shower curtain. And then I remembered, with a sick feeling inside, that I had left Judith, my prized chicken, in the bathtub. I had meant to soak her in the concoction that the vet had prescribed for her skin infection. Amidst the steamy mist, Tori wielded the toilet brush like a weapon. Judith, perched on the edge of the bathtub, was in full fight mode. Her burnished orange-brown feathers, what was left of them, were standing on end. Her eyes were crazed, and she had one leg bent and the other one ready to strike out like a ninja. Judith became aware of my presence, and the sweet girl flew right into my arms. There, Judith," I said in a soothing voice. "You're safe now." That thing is Judith?" Tori sputtered. "What's wrong with her?" She stared at Judith's patchy body. "She's got a skin disease, but don't worry, it's not contagious to humans." "I don't really care," Tori declared. "She shouldn't be in my bathtub." Meanwhile, I remembered Heath. He was now lurking behind me, taking in everything, including Tori's glorious long hair streaming almost down to the edge of the aforementioned black polo shirt that showed those legs to advantage. Focusing on the task at hand, I took issue with how Tori attacked her. If I had known I had a savage guest who would attack a harmless chicken... "Savage!" she gasped out. "You tried to kill her," I pointed out. "I can't believe you'll take a chicken's side." She pointed to the open door where Heath was peeking through. "And who is that?" "That's Heath, my Oh, just leave me alone, the two of you." She next glared at Judith. "And definitely you. Get out." I backed out with my feathered best friend and turned to Heath just as the bathroom door slammed right against my left ear, which kept ringing for several seconds. Heath guffawed. "You put Judith in her bathroom?" He should have been more sympathetic. He'd do the same for his spoiled, rotten dogs. "Come on," I muttered. The bathroom door opened. I turned to accept Tori's apology. She stood there in all her beautiful glory with those distracting legs. She snarled, "I want a different room, a clean bathtub." Alas, her anger had not abated. I doubted the apology would be forthcoming anytime soon, and then the door slammed shut.
Chapter 5. Tori. A few minutes later, when I'd sufficiently calmed down, I tried to look at the situation objectively, and was still incensed. Was that some sort of a prank? Putting a chicken in a bathtub? Yuck. The memory of me opening the curtain to find a chicken with weird bald spots on its back returned. And then the said chicken commenced to act very territorial, trying to fly at me with its talons. But what really riled me was that McCoy defended the chicken. Savage was I? I looked around at the mess of feathers and splashed water. I shut off the water that had turned everything steamy. I didn't want to get in the bathtub and contract whatever it was the chicken had. I supposed I could just head on down the next room. As I left the bathroom, I was bothered that McCoy was still inside my room, fiddling with the doorknob. "Sorry," he said in a curt voice like he didn't mean it. "I had to break down the door." I hid once again in the bathroom, taking deep breaths. I hated the feeling that he could simply barge in and enter my room when he wanted. I picked up the towel I had used to fend off the chicken and put it back on the rack. What irony. I would most likely have to clean this mess as part of my free lodging. "It's fixed," McCoy announced. "You can come out now." I opened the bathroom door a crack and looked out. The main room door was shut, like McCoy said, and he had gone. The draft chilled my bare legs, and I made my way with my pants to the door and down the hall. McCoy was just coming down the stairs and turned to me. I held the pants to cover my legs. He averted his eyes. "You can have the room next door. It's all ready." "Without chickens?" "Without chickens." The corner of his mouth lifted before he turned around and headed back down. I entered the replacement room. This one was decorated in whites as well and was equally charming. But just the same, I checked to make sure McCoy was true to his word and confirmed there were no chickens lurking in the clawfoot bathtub. I felt much, much better after a hot shower, sloughing off the past couple of days' travel, calming my nerves. I almost hated to put the server outfit back on. Being clean made me acutely aware that the clothes were filthy. I'd have to go shop for clothes, if this one-stoplight town even had such a store. And then I remembered that I didn't have any money. I sighed. There was no way I would ask McCoy for cash. I climbed back into the black outfit, brushing my hair with my fingers the best I could. To my relief, I found a hairbrush in one of the drawers. I normally would not share a hairbrush with a stranger, but this was an emergency. I opened the bathroom just as someone knocked on the main door. "Yes," I said. "I brought you some clothes," came McCoy's voice. Despite my irritation over the chicken debacle, I opened the door, curious. McCoy held a bundle in his hands. "I figured you might not have anything to change into and probably won't be able to buy anything, being that you don't have money." He was nervous, running on and on with his mouth. It was kind of sweet and charming, his chicken obsession notwithstanding. That's kind of you," I said self-consciously, pushing back my hair from my eyes. "You're welcome. Well, anyway, here you go." His eyes darted to my legs, then away. "You must be freezing." I took the clothes from him. He backed off and went on down the hallway. I closed the door and shook out the outfit. I wondered if it was from his sister-in-law's closet. The jeans were slightly bigger than my usual size, but were comfortable. The pink long-sleeve shirt flattered my complexion. All I needed was a pair of cowgirl boots, and I could have gone line dancing. There was another knock. I opened the door a crack, but McCoy was nowhere to be seen. I looked down with another jolt of surprised pleasure. On the floor was a pair of cowgirl boots and a soft, thick pair of socks. The boots were a well-worn supple leather, just a half size bigger than my usual. I smiled and then shook my head. He was still a chicken farmer who I needed to keep at arm's length, despite his kindness. I stayed in the room for a bit, and then decided I couldn't haul up in there forever. With a deep breath to brace myself, I opened the door and sailed out to find McCoy.
Chapter 6. McCoy. "You're letting her stay for free?" Heath stared at me in disbelief. We stood by the chicken coop where I'd put Judith back along with 3 other chickens. "Keep your voice down," I said. "She might hear you." "And if she does?" Heath countered. "Best that she knows she's not welcome here." "Not welcome here?" I gaped at him. "You and I know very well Althea would have taken in a complete stranger like Tori." Heath's eyes narrowed. "What's her last name? And why do you need to know that? Just in case she's on a flyer at the post office?" I thwacked him on the back of the head. "Don't be ridiculous. With that angelic face, she couldn't hurt a fly." But she was prepared to hurt Judith. That brought me up short. Heath was right. Heath jutted his chin out. "I know that would be a deal breaker with me if a girl didn't like my dogs." "What are you talking about?" I frowned. "I'm not getting into no deals." "Oh? You seem really taken by her. Can't blame you as she's real pretty." "She is, isn't she?" I thought about her pretty hair and cute figure. Heath thwacked me on the head. I jumped away. "What was that for?" "To wake you up, brother. You've known her, what, a day, if that?" "I didn't say I was going to go off and marry her, but I do want to get to know her a bit more." The back door opened and shut with its usual whine on its hinges. I put a finger to my lips and turned, prepared to greet Tori. "Holy poultry," I breathed. She stepped toward us hesitantly, her eyes wary. There was a glow about her, the glow of good health. Her shiny dark brown hair cascaded in waves around her face. The clothes fit her perfectly, but it was the pink blouse that about did me in. It was both sporty, tough, and romantic. With those boots, she looked like the prettiest cowgirl. "Close your mouth," Heath said in my ear. I nodded and cleared my throat. "Glad you found the boots," I said. "You put them at my door," she said, her forehead furrowing in confusion. "Oh, right." I wished then that Heath would leave. His presence was making me more nervous than I already was around a pretty girl like Tori. "So," he said, "what's your last name?" Tori's eyes grew wide and filled with fear. "Heath, don't you have to take your dogs for a walk today?" I asked him with a shove. "Later, yes." "I think you should go now," I glared at him, making sure he didn't miss my meaning. "Fine," he said, looking from Tori to me. "But remember what I said. Check the post office." "What did he mean by that?" Tori asked me after Heath left, his hunting dog's tails a-wagging as Heath's truck bore them away. "Ah, pay him no mind. Heath's always saying some funny stuff." Her eyes followed the direction the truck went. "Those dogs are really good just sitting on the truck bed." "People pay him a ton of money to train dogs. I guess he knows what he's doing." "Is he married?" "Nah." I kicked at a piece of straw. "He's kind of allergic to the idea of even dating women." "How come?" Her eyes widened some more. "Oh, you mean he likes—" I coughed. "No, it's not that. Though I dare say he likes dogs much more than he likes women. He's kind of a crotchety guy. Keeps to himself and his kennels." I looked into her eyes. They were an amazing emerald color. Why hadn't I noticed them before? Anyway, enough about my brother. She walked up to me, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. But then she veered off to the side and sized the coop up. She gave off a low whistle. "Wow, this coop is something else." I took a look at my handiwork, pride swelling in my chest. "This one is the Helen. I built her over 2 weekends. She blinked at me. "From scratch?" "Yes, ma'am." "It's better built than some mansions I've seen, and—" I waited for her to finish her sentence, but she just stopped and blushed. "You do fine work." "Thanks. I like to think so, or my customers wouldn't get the value for their money." "Why'd you name her Helen?" She gave me a side glance. "A girlfriend? A wife?" "I have neither. My mom's name was Helen." I bit my lip. "She passed last year." Her expression softened. "I'm sorry." "It's okay." I took a deep breath. "We miss her, of course, but she's in a better place." I could feel her eyes on me, and then she looked back at the coop. "The Helen is beautiful. That wreath on the front is so pretty." "Thanks. I put in the details she loved while she was alive." "She must have been quite a lady." "She was, putting up with all of us unruly cowboys. She was a saint." My voice cracked. "She was good for us." "I can imagine. How much is the Helen?" "Base price is $5,000. She continued to admire it. "I would gladly pay more. It's lovely." "Glad to commission one for you." I was half serious. I hoped that after this week— No, maybe Heath was right. I was crazy to think that someone like Tori would give me a second glance when she was back to her real life. I know next to nothing about chickens, she said, breaking into my thoughts. Just that they taste good. She darted a self-conscious glance at me. Sorry, you probably hate me talking about your friends that way. No, it's okay, I shrugged. Animals are meant to help humans, just not all of them need to be eaten. Like Judith. Her eyes searched the coop. What's so special about her? I glanced at her to see if she was being sarcastic, but she sounded genuinely interested. You're going to laugh, I said. Her beautiful green eyes slid toward me. Try me. So, when my mom was dying, Judith was just a pullet, a youngin'. I almost lost her. A virus came through my flock, and she was the only one that lived. I paused. It was as though she was telling me that life could go on. Tori's eyes moistened. That's sad, but beautiful. I could lose myself in her eyes for a long time. I looked away and winced. I don't tell too many people about that. A sentimental cowboy with his chicken, I'd be the laughingstock of the county. She put a hand on my arm. I wouldn't laugh. Our gazes collided, and I believed her. Her touch felt right. I stood by what I told Heath before. There was no way this angel was wanted for something. I could see into her soul, and I liked what I saw. Would you like a tour? Of the coop, that is, I asked, and immediately regretted it. She probably would think I was a redneck. But she said, I would love one. I unlatched the door, trying to not let on that her interest made me real happy, and motioned for her to enter. She curtsied and giggled, then went in. I followed, leaving the door open, but I couldn't escape that special feeling of being around someone who could be the one. I should backtrack out, but of course it was too late. I needed to give her a tour, even if it might lead to trouble like Heath warned. Besides, what did dog-crazy Heath know about girls anyway?
Chapter 7. Tori. This was not going as planned. The more I got to know McCoy, the harder it was for me to dislike him. Even that little kerfuffle earlier when he accused me of being a chicken beater didn't annoy me near as much now. And that little bit about his mama, bless his heart, I wanted to pull him to my shoulder and comfort him. Make him a piping hot kolache roll with apricot jam in the middle. That was the extent of my wheelhouse, but I sure could make a good one. Of course, I did no such thing, pull him to my shoulder, nor bake a kolache. I needed to keep my distance from this cowboy chicken farmer, which was next to impossible in this small chicken coop after the door shut behind us. My guess was the entire area was 6 feet by 4 feet. Even my bathroom back home was bigger. Despite its small size, the coop was pretty. It was built like a little vintage house, with finished walls painted mostly white with yellow accents. There were cute decorations on the wall, either chicken or egg themed. It did lack one thing: warmth. I crossed my arms over my chest and shivered. I probably should have grabbed a coat where those clothes came from, he said. I looked down at my home on the range outfit. Are these your sister-in-laws? No, she just keeps a closet full of clothes for anyone that needs them. Really? I gaped at him. Why? Sometimes people get down on their luck, he blushed. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that you're anything like that. No, I really am not, I said, thinking of my family's mansion. But not all people down on their luck are starving. I took a deep breath. Maybe they just need space. Maybe sometime you can tell me why you ran away from whatever it is you're running away from. I turned to consider him. His eyes were wide, free of guile, unlike Alexander, who was always calculating his every move. Sorry, he said, rubbing his nape. I sure am a motor mouth. I don't mean to pry. I would ask too, if I were in your shoes, I sighed. When I'm ready, maybe I'll tell you. Of course. His expression relaxed. We were standing fairly close to each other, not even a half-foot away. He wasn't a super tall dude, and at 5'4", I wasn't super short either. We were a good height match. I didn't have to raise my face too much, and we were already in perfect alignment for a kiss. A kiss? What was I thinking? But even as I tried to take my mind off romantic thoughts, there he was, staring at my lips as though he had the same crazy idea. I felt the tug and pull of attraction to him until I got a hold of myself, casting my eyes down and clearing my throat. He looked like he was waking up from a dream. "You were going to give me a tour?" I murmured. "A tour," he blinked. Oh yes, a tour."
Chapter 8. McCoy. Girls made me nervous. I never knew what to do with myself, how to start a relationship, or even take it a step further. Not that I'd ever progressed that far. I'd dated a few girls in my 29 years, but no one seriously. My brothers, especially Heath, always gave me a hard time if they thought I was falling head over heels in love with someone. Once, when I had a crush on an older girl who was visiting a family from college for the summer, he took me out on a long trail ride to talk some sense into me. By the time we returned, he had scared me on even looking at women. But Tori was something else. She wasn't tomboyish like Natalie next ranch over, who liked to rope and cut cattle like me and my brothers. She wasn't seductive and man-eating like Widow Marie, who lived by herself near Main Street and hired me to make her a chicken coop. She wasn't like any country girl I knew. And maybe that was what intrigued me about Tori. She had kind of this city slicker polish. Plus, she smelled different, not just of hay or sunshine, but a mysterious perfume that made me think of the velvet drapes at the Sunny Ridge Opera House. "Do you know anything about chickens?" I asked Tori, and could have kicked myself. Surely that was insulting to her intelligence. She scrunched her nose. "You mean more than as my main course on a plate? Not really." I rubbed my hands together. "Well, in that case, brace yourself, as you will know more about chicken husbandry than you probably care to know." Pursing her lips, she smiled. "I thought maybe you're joking, but I do believe you're serious." Shaking my head, I assured her, "I could talk your ear off about chickens all day, but I don't expect you to stand for it." If she appreciated my pun, I couldn't tell. At least she didn't look exasperated. "The coops I build aren't all alike," I said, "but they have common features. The front door has a secure locking system. I learned that the hard way when a goat unlocked one of my coops and let out the whole flock." "What a smart goat." "They can be too smart for their own good, all right, the stinkers." "Animals can be so much work." Her comment seemed so random, and yet upon it hinged any future we might have had together. As a test, I said, "Yeah, but they give back so much to me." She gazed at me with curiosity. "I've only had little yappy dogs before who acted like divas." "You need a good old hound dog, or Aussies like my brother Heath's. They live to please their humans." "So you have a dog then?" "Not right now. I might someday." "I guess your dog would be right here if you had one." I had a really good mutt named Jiffy. She was a sweetheart and left my chickens alone, but I just haven't had time to take on a puppy with my coop business booming and all. I pointed to the two cubbies along one wall. "This here's the nesting boxes. My chickens lay pretty much every day of the year. I can open the bin outside so I don't have to come into the coop if I don't want to, but I do. It's best to check on them up close, you know?" Her mouth turned down at the corners. It would seem so heartless keeping chickens just for their eggs and never saying hi to them. "Oh, they get plenty of attention around here. My sister-in-law's 3 kids like to play with them. They even tried to dress them up until Johnny put the kibosh on that." "Johnny?" Her eyes grew wide. "The rooster, the coop king. His full name was Johnny Cash." "He sounds like he has an attitude." She laughed. "Is he here?" Nah, he's flown the coop. Literally, got out somehow and was never seen again. I showed her the string pull with a ring that could be used to open the coop into the run and could stay open. The little door in the back that I could latch open and sweep out the shavings every few weeks. I thought a coop would be a lot smellier. She put her nose to the air, sniffing. But all I can smell is hay and a bit of feathers. That's the beauty of this coop. I jutted out my chin. You can keep it pretty clean. And chickens aren't really all that messy, especially with the shavings. I just layer the shavings on, turn it once in a while to compost, and it's all good. I jerked my head toward the run. Want to meet the girls? We stepped out of the coop, my nervousness around a beautiful girl like Tori dissipating around the chickens. I led her to the side run where they were pecking at the ground. The black one with the red comb is Drusilla. Camilla is the white one beside her. She's the queen of the roost, for now. Stella is the one with the bent foot. Alice is the black hen over by the corner. And, of course, you've met Judith. Tori rolled her eyes. Yes, the shower stalker. I chuckled. I'm really sorry for sicking her on you. Great way to welcome a guest, she smiled back. Her sweet expression warmed me like the sun. It was probably a good 40 degrees out, but I felt like peeling off my fleece-lined jacket. I turned from her, trying to shake that lovesick feeling I was coming down with. Lovesick? I was so in trouble. What happened to Stella's foot? She asked. More comfortable and safer topics, I explained. I had them out one time, and a hawk came and tried to attack another chicken. Stella attacked the hawk back just enough to slow the bird, and so I could come help. Wow, Tori breathed out. What a heroine. You said it. After that happened, I made sure that Stella would never, ever be served on the dinner table. Tori grimaced. But the others are fair game? Well, no, actually. I smiled sheepishly. Each one of them has a reason why they shouldn't be on a serving plate. Tori laughed. You probably also have 100 cats. There are plenty barn cats around, I admitted. But the herd's a manageable size. Mom made sure that we didn't just collect litters of kittens. The vet was down here every so often to spay or neuter any cat we could catch. Good idea. She stared at Judith. Is it just my imagination, but is she giving me the stink eye? Judith, quit it, I said, catching her evil glance. I guess so. I've never seen her act like that around a pretty girl. My cheeks grew hot. Not that I've had many pretty girls come around. Tori gave me a speculative look, but didn't say anything other than, Thanks for the tour. You are very welcome. You must have a nicer coop over at your place. That's the thing, I sighed. You know how the plumber fixes his own plumbing last? I built this for a prototype, but have been so busy with orders I couldn't really make my own. Well, at least a pretty-looking one. Yeah, I get that. She kicked at the grass that was already starting to green up from the winter. So, I said, feeling awkward. I was wondering if I could show you how to clean. She blinked those pretty eyes at me. Why? You know, our agreement was you could stay, but in exchange you would help clean. Oh, right. I was relieved to finally get that out of the way, but with a sinking feeling I was afraid I put some distance between us by reminding her of our bargain.
Chapter 9. Tori. So, this cowboy chicken farmer was serious about our bargain? Drats. I had only offered to clean because it was the most convenient thing to say. I really didn't mean it. I didn't enjoy cleaning up after myself. What more for other people? But I had made a deal, so I followed him into the bed and breakfast. Hey, I was a quick learner. I had 2 years of Spanish to show for before I went as an exchange student and flirted with those boys until Daddy caught wind of that danger and had me come home. I learned how to bake at Cordon Bleu. This was no different. From a closet, McCoy took out a caddy of cleaning supplies. So, first, he looked down at my narrowed boots. We take our shoes off before cleaning a room. Down to our socks? I said, feeling a chill in the air from a draft seeping in from somewhere. Or barefoot, if you prefer. I glanced at the newish but not very thick pile of carpet. I'll just go in socks. Perfect. He kept his socks on, too. I glanced at the bed, and then the back of this sweet and naive cowboy. What would he do, I wondered, if I shoved him onto the bed, trapped him, and tickled him? Of course, I did no such thing. McCoy pulled the drapes open. Althea likes me to let the sunshine in. That way you can see the dust everywhere. It was true. I shuddered at all the dust that the sunshine revealed. Whoa, he cringed. Pretty bad, huh? That's what we're here for. Cue the children's show cleanup song. I was never really good at that as a child, but I smiled to assure him that I understood perfectly. So for Dustin, you spray this polish and use this cloth. He held up a yellow chamois cloth. The vacuum is in that closet in the hallway. The coverlet was to be completely taken off and checked. If there were any bodily fluids, ew, we needed to switch it out with a new one. So that was how hotels take care of coverlets? I cringed at the fact that they weren't washed simply as a matter of course. The sheets would be stripped off, sprayed with spray and wash before getting loaded up in the washer and dryer. My stomach churned. He expected me to do laundry, too? I followed him around, pausing at the bathroom door. Please, not the toilet. Something wrong? He was looking at me with concern. Just the exertion of a chicken coop tour followed by cleaning, I said, thinking fast on my feet. Yeah, that could be overwhelming. He studied me for a long minute, making my blood hum, and then turned back to the bathroom. What was with me and this cowboy? I had just barely met him, and every time he looked at me, I almost expected a cheesy romantic soundtrack to play in the background. You're leaving in a week's time. Maybe you should go sooner. The thought of Alexander and his bullying ways made me stay put. I tuned back into the present, with McCoy showing me how to scrub the sink. Ugh, there was hair in the drain. I suppressed the gag reflex. He looked back at me, and I rearranged my expression into that of serious study. You can use the rubber gloves in the container, of course, he suggested. I frowned. Wait, to scrub the sink with? No, to use this sponge along with this bathroom foaming cleanser. He held up a sad-looking sponge. But doesn't the sponge hold all the bacteria in it? McCoy shrugged. Maybe, but that's how Althea does it. I wanted to meet this Althea and sit her down on the evils of bacteria. Althea must be a real stickler for cleanliness. She tries. She bakes mean pies, that's her specialty, and loves people to death. I bet she was a hugger, too. I can't wait to meet her. That one I meant. Maybe not this time around, but someday. She will be back Monday. Will you be able to stay till then? If I were to meet more of his family, I'd get sucked in more into their life. I'll think about it. McCoy smiled, that sweet, innocent smile that made me feel like a person kicking a kitten. Great. I think she'd like you a lot. She would? I genuinely wanted to know. Why? Well, she likes everyone for one, and you've obviously been through a lot. She can sense that in a person. Me? I sputtered. How can you tell that? His gaze made me feel exposed. I just can. He went on to the bathtub, which had a partially drawn shower curtain. Probably sensing my apprehension, he turned to me. Don't worry, there isn't a chicken back here. I bit my lip. There better not be. See? He drew back the curtain. Cock-a-doodle-doo! He hollered, making me jump. I slapped his arm. That's plain mean. Sorry. He didn't look sorry. I couldn't resist it. My mind went back to what he said earlier, that I had obviously been through a lot. Whatever gave him that idea? The only thing I had been through was being told who to marry. Surely I didn't look so miserable. I snuck a peek at my face and flinched. My eyes were kind of bleary from being up all night on the bus. My expression was bleaker than I expected. And then, of course, there's the toilet, McCoy announced. Of course. I stood as far away as possible while still being able to peek around him at the toilet bowl. I would use this brush. He pointed at the item at the corner to the side of the toilet. Pour a generous amount of cleanser in there and scrub good until it's all clean. My stomach churned some more, and the room spun. And then he was grasping my arm. Are you okay, Tori? He was standing close. I got even more lightheaded. I think I just need to eat something. His voice was gentle. When was the last time you ate? I can't remember. I was on the bus for a long time, so tell you what. His hands on my arm felt good, comforting. How about if you clean what you can while I'll whip you up an omelet? My stomach growled. Oh, that would be wonderful. Any food allergies or things I should avoid? Nope. He looked pleased. Perfect. Unless you want to come down first. No, I can start cleaning. Why not? The sooner I get this over with, the better. He left the room whistling. Who whistled anymore? Apparently cowboy chicken farmers like McCoy. He was too cute. I glanced at the cleaning supplies, a sconce, and picked up the caddy gingerly, taking it out to the bedroom. I would start there. The toilet would be last. I sprayed the polish on the laminate furniture and sneezed from the airborne particles. Again, I looked at my reflection. Me in a plaid cowgirl shirt, my long hair spread around my shoulders, holding a rag and a spray of polish. I hardly recognized myself.
Chapter 10. McCoy. I whistled on my way down to the kitchen. I was raring to cook my own special kind of omelet for Tori. I would make her the fiesta. Just thinking about how good it would smell and hopefully bowl her over made me happy. I had taken the eggs out of the fridge to stand in room temperature for a minute or two when I heard a truck pulling up into the driveway. It was probably one of my brothers. We all drove trucks. Like I suspected, it was Patrick. At 41, Patrick was the oldest in our family, and still unmarried even though he had been dating Winnie for a long time, like during the Wild West even. He rodeoed like 90% of the male population in Sunny Ridge did, and he walked funny like someone who had been bucked off one too many bareback broncs. He had a knack for coming over where I was whenever I was cooking, I swore. The bell to the front door dinged, and the sound of boots thudding across the entry reached me in the kitchen. "In here," I yelled. "Yup, I can tell," he said, marching over to where I was and lusting after my concoction. "It's not for you," I said. "Who is it for, then?" He still tried to swipe a piece off the sides. I held out the pan and shoved him away with my shoulder. "Tori." "I guess, huh?" "She's a, how to explain? Guest?" I was going to say housekeeper, but it didn't sound right. I didn't want Patrick to judge her based on that. "Good." Patrick nodded as he moved away from the stove to lean against the kitchen counter. "So, you're holding down the fort okay?" I narrowed my eyes at him. "Are you checking for Althea?" "You bet." I sighed. "You guys just don't give me a break." "Trust must be earned, my boy." "Come on, Patrick, give me some credit." "Maybe so, but you're also pretty naive. Remember that time you fell for the ruse Molly played on you? The one where she said she'd give you $10 if you give her a 20? I was in kindergarten, Patrick, and she was in 2nd grade. Still. Anyway, all's well here. I flipped the omelet. It looked perfect, if I may say so myself. "You got more where that came from?" Patrick said, giving the pan a meaningful glance. "Just give me a minute and... all done." We both turned to look at Tori, looking gloriously beautiful with her hair streaming down her shoulders, her cheeks pink, and her eyes shining brightly. She held the cleaning caddy aloft like a trophy. "Great job," I said. And then I remembered Patrick. I glanced at him, catching his raised eyebrow as his gaze went from Tori to me and back. "Howdy, ma'am," he said, pushing off the counter and offering a hand to shake. "I'm Patrick." "Hello." Tori's eyes widened at his approach. With his swagger, he always turned girls' heads. For a moment, I got real jealous of my brother, until I reminded myself he was practically wedded to his longtime girlfriend, Winnie. Tori, this is Patrick, my oldest brother. Patrick, Tori. Nice to meet you, Patrick drawled even more pronounced. Likewise. Tori blushed even more prettily. It almost seemed as though Patrick had kissed her hand. It had the same swooning effect. I caught Tori giving him a fascinated once-over. Even the gray around his temples only made him seem more attractive. Well, anyway, Tori cleared her throat and glanced back at me. Should I just put this caddy back in the closet? Sure, I said. Be right back. She sashayed out, taking some of the sunshine out of the kitchen. What was that all about? Patrick's eyes narrowed. I told you, that was Tori. I got that part. Why was Tori, our guest, holding the cleaning caddy? I looked down at my boots and up at Patrick. I could hide the truth all I wanted, and Patrick was going to ferret it out. If you promise not to tell... Wait. Patrick took a step back. Do I gotta be sitting down for this? It's nothing illegal. Patrick watched me and waited. I hitched my thumbs on my jean loops. She got here early today after Althea left and asked if she could stay for a week, except she didn't have any money, so I let her stay in exchange for helping clean the place. I knew it. Stop giving me that smug look, Patrick, I said through gritted teeth. So she's staying here for free. I told you she's... Yes, cleaning in exchange for free lodging. Patrick peered at me. You know, of course you could do the cleaning yourself. Of course I thought of that, but she was desperate and so... You fell for that cute smile, huh? I folded my arms across my chest. Maybe you ought to take yourself and your high and mighty thoughts with yourself, Patrick. You know the way out. Touchy, are we? I ignored him. Patrick smiled, like he knew that he was getting under my skin. I hated that he and the others did. Okay, baby brother. He doffed his hat and left me fuming. I had to take several deep breaths. When we were younger, I hero-worshipped my brothers, especially Patrick, but no longer. The door opened and in entered Tori. Her expression turned serious as she must have caught the resolve on my face. Something wrong? I faked a smile. Just my brother needling me like a gnat. Her whole face lit up. I wanted to do things that would make her smile more. Those pesky siblings, she said, shaking her head. Want to check my handiwork upstairs? Gladly. I looked forward to proving Patrick wrong.
Chapter 11. Tori. I was inexplicably nervous. It wasn't like I needed McCoy's approval to continue staying at the bed and breakfast, but I was immensely proud of what I had just accomplished. We took our shoes off at the doorway and kept our socks on. I motioned for McCoy to enter the bedroom, followed him, and stepped to the side, anxious to watch his reaction. Of course, you'll have to ignore the naked bed, I said. Once I figure out how to operate your washing machine, I can wash the sheets. He nodded, but his eyes were taking in the room. He bit his lip, and I could sense something was very wrong. He rubbed his nape. What is it? I asked. Even as I waited for his answer, the sunlight streaming in the room told me. I had left streak marks on the furniture. Not only that, but the marks were bleached, white. My stomach fell. What cleanser did you use for the furniture? He asked. The one you told me. I said, the furniture polish. He walked over to the caddy and fished out a spray can. This one? To my relief, it was the can I had used. Yes, that one. McCoy flinched. I swallowed nervously. What? This is the disinfectant bleach, he said, for the toilets. I felt like I was going to pass out. I looked around again at the street's furniture. Is that why? He nodded slowly. Afraid so. Oh, dear. I covered my face with my hands. Oh, no. It's okay. We'll make something work. But I just ruined your sister-in-law's beautiful furniture, I moaned. We'll take care of that in a moment. You clean the bathroom, too? Yes. Then I remembered saying out loud, mostly to myself, so if I used the bleach here, I must have used the polish there. McCoy was already making his way to the bathroom. Wait, I warned. McCoy! It's okay, he said over his shoulder. I'm sure it'll be fine. No, you don't understand. I hurried to reach him. I put the polish down on the... Like slow motion, McCoy took a step on the shiny floor in his socks. A second later, his foot slid up and his head flew backwards in a spectacular fashion. With a thud, he fell, cowboy hat and all, on the floor I had sprayed with polish instead of disinfectant. I let out a piercing scream, then crouched over his inert body. Amazingly, his hat stayed on. Oh my, I tapped on his cheek. McCoy, wake up. He was out, stone cold. Next, I tried to pull off his hat. Wow, it was wedged on tight. With a bit of force, I got it off. The hat's outline a pink welt line around his forehead. And then I panicked. What if he had gotten a concussion and taking off the hat made it worse? I tried to think back to first aid classes I had taken in the past. Why hadn't I paid better attention then? Because I never thought I would actually be tending to an unconscious cowboy in a bed and breakfast somewhere. Without his hat, McCoy looked younger, sweeter than it seems even possible. I choked back a sob. I had made such a mess of things. First, I'd ruined the furniture. Second, I'd probably killed the only kind soul I would ever meet in Sunny Ridge, Colorado. I knew I should check his wound. I breathed in deep and lifted his head, my stomach preparing to get squeamish at the blood on the tile. There were sounds of heavy boots coming towards the room in the hallway, startling me. I pulled back in my surprise and dropped McCoy's head back on the tile. Oops, I said, sorry. But McCoy groaned. He groaned. The door to the room burst open and Patrick entered. What is going on here? He asked, staring at McCoy. He's alive, I assured him. I thought he would be happy, but no. He strode over and looked over us with his hands on his hips. Step away from my brother before you hurt him some more. You don't think I would intentionally hurt him, do you? I asked, my pride stung. But the brother wouldn't listen. You okay, McCoy? He said, pulling back at his eyelids and looking at his pupils. I was paying attention. This might come in handy the next time I knock someone out again. McCoy groaned again, the sound music to my ears. Patrick glared at me. Step back, lady, and do not touch him. I wanted to argue with him that I wasn't the one manhandling his brother, but I stepped back. Let him take responsibility. He marched over to the bedside stand and picked up the phone, punching in numbers. Of course. Why hadn't I thought to call 911? I felt so dumb. That should have been the first thing. I remembered now, from the first aid class. Hello, this is Patrick Brown down at Riverdale Ranch B&B. I want to report an unconscious man. It's my brother, McCoy Brown. He turned to me with an unforgiving stare. What happened? He slipped on the floor and hit his head on the tile. The man was scary, like he wanted to pin the accident on me. I could tell, with his grim and unchanging scowl, that he didn't believe a word I said. An employee of ours is saying that he slipped on the floor and hit his head on the tile. He listened. Yes, we won't move him. Yes, I'll hang on the line. I looked around for some place to sit. Don't leave the room, Patrick barked. I was just going to sit on a chair. I put my hands on my hips. Am I allowed to do that? He grunted before pulling the phone all the way to the end of its cord and sitting on the floor beside McCoy. The operator must have come back on because he was yesing and knowing and 3 bags fulling. Still with the phone at his ear, he looked at me. The ambulance is coming. I nodded, feeling miserable. I can stay here and check guests in. You will do no such thing, he said. But what if someone comes? We'll lock the doors shut. That'll give people notice. I hadn't only tried to kill McCoy, I was also ruining his sister-in-law's livelihood. Patrick dialed a number. Winnie, I gotta attend to something. McCoy's out cold at the B&B. I'll explain more. He glanced at me, eyes shooting daggers. But he slipped in a bathroom and hit his head on a tile. He listened. Fine. I guess you can come down and man the desk. His voice lost a bit of its edge, and I wondered who this Winnie was that she could soften a cowboy like Patrick. Who's Winnie? I asked. I waited for an explanation, but Patrick wasn't about to play nice. I watched the dust motes floating around and the sunbeams streaming into what I thought was a clean room. A siren sounded in the distance, and then neared. My worry for McCoy mingled with worry for myself. I might have to tell the police my real name. What if this whole incident were to get splashed in the papers? I closed my eyes, my body rigid with apprehension. I opened my eyes to firefighters bursting into the room. It was like something from the movies, a bunch of muscular men in their uniforms striding in, except there was no fire. The first ones to enter seemed taken aback by my presence, staring at me with gaping mouths. "Over here," Patrick said, sounding impatient. A couple of them went over to him, while a couple came to me. Behind them, a woman arrived too. I would have noted how she looked, as I suspected she was Winnie, but I had other pressing concerns for the moment. Everything was a blur. "Are you all right?" one of the firefighters asked. He had spoken so kindly I couldn't help but burst into tears. I was sure that Patrick was looking at me with distaste, but I didn't care. I had done nothing wrong, and he was being a bully. The firefighters looked at each other, and one of them got down on one knee. With that little act, he reminded me so much of Alexander proposing. That was the whole reason I was even in this pickle. I howled louder. "Here now, miss," the firefighter said, patting my shoulder awkwardly. "We're here to help." The other one came up with a tissue from somewhere and handed it to me. "Thank you so much," I said between sobs, nodding and wiping my tears. "Maybe you could tell me what happened," the firefighter who was kneeling said. His gray eyes were kind, unlike some cowboy's brother. I just had to tell the truth, and everything would be okay, I knew. "I was supposed to clean the room." "You work here then?" "Kind of." I bit my lip. "I was passing through today. I had taken the bus from a long ways from here. I had stopped in other motels, but no one would let me stay. I hadn't any money, you see. Someone had stolen my wallet on the bus. I was asleep, and she took my money." The recollection brought up more tears and more patting on my shoulder. "McCoy was kind enough to let me stay. In exchange, I was going to clean the rooms." I let out a shaky breath. "He had shown me how to clean the rooms, what I should use, but I got the containers mixed up. I used the disinfectant bleach on the furniture and the furniture polish on the bathroom tile." "You put the polish on the tile." "I wanted to disinfect it." I blew my nose loudly and sniffled. "Oh, I see." The firefighter smiled. "And your name is—" "Tori." I hoped they wouldn't ask for my last name, and he didn't. "My name is Eric, by the way." He was so nice. I could have cried some more. "Hi, Eric." There was a commotion over where McCoy lay, and then the firefighters were carrying him up in a stretcher. Poor McCoy. I held the tissue to my nose. Now I could pay attention to the beautiful redhead dressed in elegant ranch style, confident, gorgeous, and wearing the best-looking pair of burnished sienna cowgirl boots I had ever seen, fiery as her hair. There were so many new people coming in and out, my head was reeling. So this was Winnie? She stopped Patrick from following the firefighters. I could hear him give Winnie the lowdown while she peeked past his shoulder at me, nodding. And then they were arguing softly, like Patrick was saying no, but Winnie was just patiently explaining back to him. "No," Patrick said, "she shouldn't. She caused this. I could keep an eye on her at the B&B. What will she do there anyway? Isn't it better she's out of the way?" "I'm not putting you in harm's way." "Oh, hush." She kissed his cheek. "You heard her explanation. Go. Be with McCoy. We'll hold the fort down." She stepped away from him and toward me. "I'm Winnie, Patrick's girlfriend." Patrick scowled, but did as this beautiful woman told him. Winnie and I exchanged glances, and I knew then and there I would have an ally in her. Chapter 12. Tori. "How's that coming?" Winnie asked me. She was making the bed in the guest room while I was trying to buff out the bleach streaks on the furniture. "It looks slightly better," I said, "but I think it'll always have that acid wash. Adds more character to the wood, right?" She winked. "If it doesn't come out completely, I'm willing to pay for it," Winnie shrugged. "Knowing Althea, she got this at the thrift store. Not worth a whole lot. Maybe she could repaint it some fun color like turquoise." "Maybe." I was enjoying Winnie's cheerful company, but deep down, I was worried about McCoy. I thought I heard an engine in the distance, so I craned my neck to watch out the window, but it was just some neighbor coming down the road. McCoy fell hard for you, didn't he? Winnie said. I looked over at her, startled by her choice of words. Pun intended, she grinned. I heard what you told the EMT. McCoy must have liked you a lot to offer you a place to stay. And look what he got in return for his trouble, I sighed. Some things he got. Accidents happen. Winnie fluffed the flat sheet over the bed, making it billow high and soft. Her amazing red hair burned bright against all that white. Patrick, of all people, should know that. What do you mean? He's a rodeo star. That last word dripped with impatience. He rides bareback bronc. Really? That's tough. Sure, the girls seem to think so anyway. Have you and he been dating for a while? I brought myself up short. Sorry for getting personal. No problem. 5 years. I also get asked, are you still dating that rodeo star? Everyone wants to know. And the answer, unfortunately, is yes. I got all confused and frowned. Winnie caught my expression. See, I wouldn't doubt we hold the longest dating record in the history of Sunnyridge. She raised her ring finger. This is still bare. I don't get it. I stared at her hair and clothes, noted her confidence. Any man would be crazy not to marry you. She smiled wryly. At first, I thought it was great to not be tied down. We had the best of both worlds, he and I dating and not really having to set up a house yet. He travels all over for his rodeo career. If I were married to him, I told myself, I would need to traipse around. She tucked the sheet in the bed frame and started pulling on the bedspread. As it is, I still traipse around him. She held up her hand. Without a rock. I felt sorry for Winnie. We were in such opposite situations. I got a rock, but didn't want the giver. She wanted Patrick, who hadn't given her a rock yet. For one panicked second, I thought that maybe I'd left the engagement ring on my finger. But no, I confirmed with a quick glance my ring finger was bare. 5 years, I echoed. I still don't understand why he hasn't proposed to you yet. Her green eyes glittered. Like I said, we're two pretty independent people. I was perfectly fine with us just dating, and I think he just got used to it. His family treats me like I'm already his wife. His mom used to give me reminder notes because she said he listened to me best. A shame she died before we could marry. She fluffed up the pillows and set the shams in front of them. We could have gone along like usual, but I guess I changed. Sometime along the way, I wanted a home. Children. There was a catch in her voice. I've started to think, with or without him. Some people don't bother with marriage, I said. Right, I'm not some people, though. She flicked a glance at me. Are you? I shook my head. If a man wants me, lock, stock, and barrel, he'll have to put a ring on it, you know? I guess he must not want me enough. On some other woman, it would have sounded like whining, but Winnie's tone smacked of hard-eyed realism. Anyway, Winnie said, giving me a speculative look, I wouldn't be shocked if McCoy beat Patrick and me to the altar. He's a sweetheart. I looked away, focusing on the furniture. All this talk of marriage was making me feel uncomfortable, having just barely escaped the noose. He is, huh? Sure, wouldn't hurt a fly. Their mom really babied him along. That sounds bad, but it made him turn out really in tune with what makes women happy. I smoothed a crease on the bedspread. So, what's wrong with him? You know, not being married yet at 30. His brothers, to tell you the truth. No one's good enough for them. I'm of a mind to tell McCoy to just elope before his brothers catch wind of his intentions. They say he's too naive, but I think they want to protect him. Because as you've seen, he's just so stinking nice. I thought of his eager offer to prepare food and clapped my hand over my forehead. Oops. I forgot all about the omelet he made me. See? Winnie chuckled. That's what I mean. I'll be right back. I'm done here anyway. She gestured with a jerk of her head. How about let's go down and you can eat while we keep chatting? The omelet had dried up a bit just sitting in the pan, but it was still very good with a little spicy kick that made each bite come alive. It's delicious, I said with a full mouth. I can believe it. McCoy is a good cook. More than eggs? She nodded. More than eggs. That's why he would make a good catch for any woman. She sidled a glance at me. You know what? I've been yakking away this whole time. What about you? Where are you from? I munched on my food self-consciously, trying to stall. Should I lie? Should I refuse to answer her? I'd Rather not say, I said truthfully. Winnie raised an eyebrow. Normally, if someone hedges around that question, I'd be more suspicious, but you look like a nice girl. You're not running from the law, are you? Oh, no, not at all. But running away from something. Her voice was soft. Or someone. I swallowed and raised my eyes to her guiltily. I knew it, she said. I don't see why someone like you would end up here in Sunny Ridge penniless otherwise. Someone like me? I downed the last delicious bite of omelet with a guzzle of water. You look like a valley girl, one of those rich ones on the east side, except you've got a drawl, so you're probably from the south. She held up a hand. You don't have to tell me, I'm just playing with you. I need to know something, mostly for McCoy's sake. Her piercing glance made me feel nervous. Yes? You're not married, are you? Or getting divorced? No, I shook my head firmly. No to both. Her face relaxed. Good, she paused. A boyfriend? I bit my lip. Ah, yes, she said. I kind of fell into the relationship, so I'm not sure if it counts. Winnie blinked and I explained. My family has known him in forever, and I kind of idolized him for so long. I didn't know any better. I lived a pretty sheltered life. My parents encouraged us to date. I think they wanted for me to be safe with him, I chortled. Well, I was safe, all right. Bored and safe. So is that why you ran away? Winnie gave me a searching glance. To experience an adventure? No, I shook my head. How's this for irony? He proposed to me. Winnie gave me a sympathetic glance. Lucky you. I pushed away my plate and rested my chin on my hand. I didn't feel lucky. I didn't feel much of anything, actually. He told me he was going to announce our engagement that night. He didn't even give me the courtesy of waiting for my answer, just assumed that my shocked silence meant yes. My voice lowered to a whisper. But the worst thing was, he recruited my parents to pressure me. He actually went to fetch them, and the three of them talked to me about why he would be a good choice of a husband. After a few minutes, I kind of tuned out and plotted my running away. I told them I would think about it, like I had a change of heart. Instead, I took the bus and ended up here. Winnie studied my face. How old are you? 24. Winnie raised an eyebrow. Why didn't you just stand up to them, girl? It's not like you live in a country where they still arrange marriages. I thought of the calm way Daddy chipped away at all of my reservations about Alexander. He'd pointed out how he was successful and could provide for the lifestyle I was used to, how it had already been part of their unspoken agreement with his parents, how much it would make Mama happy. I swallowed painfully. In my part of America, some families still do. Where? In some backwater town that hasn't heard of women's rights? She was really steamed about it, and she was right. I should be ashamed for being a pushover to my parents. It's not that simple. Sorry. Her expression softened. It's not your fault that your parents are bullies. She cocked her head. Your family knows you're safe. No, I shook my head. No one knows where I am. They must be pretty worried, aren't they? Maybe. I left a note. I said to not look for me, that I would come back soon. Winnie pursed her lips. I don't know. If someone I love were to run away, I wouldn't pin my hopes on a letter that very well could have been forged. I squirmed at her words, feeling a bit resentful that she was laying a guilt trip on me. I didn't really want to think of my family just yet. If I were to tell my family, even my mom, that I was okay, I was pretty sure they would be able to trace my call and then haul me home and wed it to Alexander. The phone rang, and Winnie picked up the receiver from its cradle. Hey, her voice softened, and I guessed that Patrick was on the phone. Despite all her expressions of frustration over the ornery guy, it was clear she was in love with him. Oh, good, she said. We'll be over right away. She flicked a glance at me and turned so only her profile showed. Yes, I plan to bring her. Oh, he did. There was a smile in her voice. Good. How is he? I blurted out as soon as she hung up. Great. He has a little bump, but he's tested normal for reflexes. He's asked about you. She smirked. Want to go to the hospital with me? A warm, pleasant feeling spread across my face, and then I hesitated. Wouldn't Patrick mind if I came? Don't you worry about Patrick, Winnie said. He's like a boiled egg, tough on the outside, but soft and squishy on the inside.
Chapter 13. McCoy. "How are you feeling?" Patrick asked me as I came to. I felt the goose egg on the back of my head and winced. "It's a good thing you have a hard head," Patrick declared. "Also, the doctor said it helped you were wearing a hat." Ah, no wonder my head felt different. Not wearing a hat was like not being fully clothed. I didn't answer. I blinked, trying to get my bearings. Patrick's voice turned gruff. "Don't give us another scare like that, or I really will smack you." "Now you know how Winnie feels when you take a spill." He snorted. She couldn't care less. I gave him a puzzled look. They were in love, and Winnie was always looking out for him. She and Patrick confused me. Sometimes they acted like an old couple who were on the verge of getting divorced, and they hadn't even married yet. But Patrick wouldn't give up Winnie. I knew that the whole family would truss him up and disown him if he did such a thing. She was the best thing that ever happened to him. "Yeah, right," I retorted. "Lately she's been kind of difficult." "What you mean?" "Nothing, just let's focus on your problems, brother, not mine." Which was good timing as it happened. There was a sound of ladies' voices at the door, with Winnie walking in, followed by Tori. I was so glad to see her, and it seemed so was she to see me, with her shining eyes and bright smile. A guy could only hope. Tori hung back, standing a step behind Winnie. I wanted to assure her that I was fine, but with the others listening, I didn't want to put her on the spot. Just acknowledging that would remind Patrick, according to his own words, she'd caused this accident. "You feeling okay?" Winnie asked me, holding up a hand. "How many fingers do you see?" 17, I joked, and was pleased to see that made Tori laugh. Winnie persisted. "Seriously." "I'm fine." With 3 of them looking in on me, there were too many people in the room. After a few minutes of chatting, I looked at Patrick. "Aren't you guys hungry?" "I'll eat later," he said. Winnie linked arms with him. "But I am. When was the last time you took me on a lunch date? I hear the hospital cafeteria is hopping." "I don't want to know what's hopping in them warmers," Patrick groused, but let her lead him out. That left Tori standing by herself, kind of far from me. "You don't have to stand back so far," I teased. "I haven't got anything contagious." She moved closer, her lips twitching. "I'm glad you're okay. I thought I'd killed you." "Gonna take more than a fall on shiny floors for me to kick the bucket. I'm really okay. I probably should be going home already. It's just a bump." I glanced at the doorway. Glad they left. It'll be nice to talk without Patrick scowling the whole time. She rolled her eyes and nodded. "Hey," I whispered. She raised her lovely eyes to mine. I was semi-conscious when my knucklehead of a brother called 911. He made you sound like a suspect. Of course, you and I know you hadn't hurt me. You're too sweet and kind to do that. "You've only known me for a day," she said, but she beamed with pleasure. "Less than that, even." "Yes, but I can see straight into your soul." She squeaked. "You can?" I nodded. "And it tells me all I need to know about you. You pretend to not like chickens, but you're a closet chicken fan." "That's it." Her eyes danced. "You must have gotten knocked out pretty bad to sing praises of me." "I got maybe a bit of a bruise, I think. I can't look behind my back very well." "Did no one give you a mirror?" "I make it my personal policy to not look in a mirror. Too traumatic." The way her gaze moved over my eyes, my nose, my lips, before pulling slowly away back to my eyes, as though she liked what she saw, made me feel woozier. Yep, she said. Good policy. She bit her lip, a little nervous tic that I'd come to look forward to. Can I see? She looked half afraid, half fascinated. Do you faint at blood? I asked. That bad? Her eyes were round. Just kidding. I raised my head off the pillow and tilted it to the side. Ta-da! She didn't say anything for a long moment, and I wondered if she was going to faint. But she whispered, Oh, McCoy, I am so sorry. I felt her fingers through my hair, down my nape, then grazing my bare skin. I shivered with pleasure and kept my head turned. I never wanted her to stop. Does it hurt? Her head was close to mine. If I had turned, I suspected she would be within kissing distance. Did it hurt? It didn't, not really. Just a dull throb. Yes. You poor thing. She stroked my hair again. I sighed. I'm sure I will recover, I paused. Eventually. I need to make up for this somehow, she vowed. You don't need to, I protested weakly. Unless you insist. Of course, she leaned forward. What could I do? I was about to say, go on a date with me when heavy footsteps interrupted us. My brother Heath's voice boomed. Who gave you permission to sleep on the job? I straightened up toward the door, annoyed at his intrusion, and then a wet nose pushed its way around Tori, who jumped to the side. Who's this one? I asked. Heath was always bringing client dogs everywhere. Skittles. Hello, Skittles, I greeted the red-boned coonhound. She licked me until I was soaked through, and then turned her attention to Tori. Now don't you get any ideas, I warned the dog. But Tori scrunched herself at the knees and started making baby sounds at Skittles, who responded with the biggest tongue licking. Tori's face shone with spit and happiness. She laughed and petted Skittles on the head. The image of this beautiful woman and the dog she had barely met but was already best buds with enthralled me, as it did Heath. He watched with a gaping mouth. I was sure he had wanted to flush Tori like a pheasant from a field to give the family more ammunition to not like her, but it backfired, like one of his old shotguns did. Patrick and Winnie chose to show up at that moment too, which made for a whole lot of people and dog in the room, but it was fine. I was ready to go home, truthfully. After Heath teased me mercilessly about needing to be taken to the hospital instead of just being a tough cowboy, I sat up. Can you stand okay? Tori asked. I am feeling a little woozy, I said. It wasn't exactly a lie because I had sat up too fast. Tori came over and put her arm around my waist. Here, you can lean on me, she offered. My eyes met my brother's. Patrick was shaking his head and Heath was rolling his eyes. Standing between the two of them, Winnie looked mighty pleased. Thank you, I said, trying to not lean too hard on Tori, but relishing the feel of her warmth against my side. A sweet fragrance from her dark brown hair wafted to me. I resisted the urge to press my lips against the soft-looking strands. You fellows issued an invitation yet to Tori for this Sunday? Winnie asked. What Sunday? Tori asked. Patrick explained. It's the grand old family Sunday dinner at my dad's. Oh, I couldn't possibly intrude, Tori said. Heath nodded. I dare say it would be pretty rude. Winnie jabbed him in the side with her elbow. I think it's a great idea, I said. As if to underscore her agreement, Skittles turned to Tori and bumped her hand, as though to say, pet me. Then it's settled. Winnie had a smug expression.
Chapter 14. Tori. After the accident, things changed markedly between me and McCoy. For one, he kept sneaking glances at me and then not really trying to look away when I caught him, For another, I was all worried that he would relapse, so I insisted he take it easy while I did the lion's share of work at the B&B. I drove his truck and we went shopping at the store for ingredients for the next few days' meals and cleaned the rooms with the right sprays. "What's this?" McCoy asked midweek when we sat down to lunch after a morning of chores. His eyes widened at the plateful of linguine pasta in front of him, covered with steaming hot white sauce. "Chicken Alfredo," I said. "From scratch?" "No, bottled sauce for me," I shuddered. He took a bite. "You like it?" I asked. His eyes grew round. "It's amazing." "I know." He laughed. "Humble are we? Where'd you learn to cook like that?" I almost said in Paris for a summer, but caught myself. "I took lessons from a chef." "No kiddin'. So good. You should give Althea your recipe. It'd be a hit with her customers." "I can leave it with you, since I might not be here when she gets back." "You could stay a little longer," McCoy hinted. I glanced out the window at the picturesque scene. Though the branches were scraggly from winter, there was also promising hints of spring. A budding leaf off the vines, grasses starting to green up. In the field nearby, a fat horse grazed. McCoy told me she was expecting a baby in a few weeks. In the distant mountains, snow covered the tops, contrasting against the blue, blue sky, as blue as McCoy's eyes. He gazed at me with transparent hope. "Maybe," I said. My eyes drifted to the snow-capped mountains again. "You get snow here a lot in the winter?" "Yes, but it's been a mild winter. Where I live, we don't get snow, just a dusting around Christmas, if we're lucky." "You've never seen snow before?" "Oh, I have," I said, thinking of our many jaunts to ski resorts in Europe. "But I have to get away to experience it fully, you know?" He leaned back and smiled. "It's so tempting to do 20 questions to figure out where you live." I tossed my head. "You wish. If I promise to only do 20 questions, can I try to figure out your home state?" He looked like a little boy begging to be allowed to stay up. I suppressed a smile. "No." "Fine," he thought for a minute. "How about if I get to ask 20 questions while we feed the chickens?" I gave him a side eye. "What kinds of questions?" "About you. What you like, what makes you happy, that kind of thing." "Why?" I asked. "So you can match me up to a missing persons database?" "Yep, that's it." I chewed on the inside of my lip. "But I can stop the interrogation at any time." "Sure." We cleaned up after my dinner hit, and then we went out to the yard. This felt normal, like we were a couple, comfortable, happy, doing simple things. My parents were never the model of a happy marriage. Daddy was a workaholic and Mama was a shopaholic. I learned early on how to manipulate them to my advantage, scoring several trips around the world, a Porsche at 16, and clothes to fill a room-size walk-in closet. I pictured McCoy asking my parents for my hand. Daddy would laugh him out of the room, and Mama would faint. Daddy would also probably put a restraining order against him. I wouldn't want to subject a sweetheart like McCoy to the wolves. We reached the coop, around which his flock was out, free, pecking at the ground. He unlatched the coop door. "Is Tori your real name?" "No." "Is your real name Victoria?" "Yes." "Pretty, by the way." His eyes flicked back at me. Did he mean me or my name? "Both?" "Thanks. Do you like Tori better?" "I wouldn't go by it if I didn't, would I?" I held up 3 fingers. He stared at my hand. "That last question wasn't actually one." "Nice try." "Seriously, but okay." He filled up the waterer and checked the feeder. "Do you mind wheeling the wheelbarrow here?" I maneuvered it to the edge of the coop. He picked up a pitchfork and added a new layer of straw. "I won't count that as a question," I conceded. He laughed and shook his head. 17 more to go, huh? What did you want to be when you were a kid?" "A veterinarian, like everyone else in our neighborhood." I kicked at some straw. And then I realized I actually had to have good grades and like science. So yeah, I decided it wasn't for me. I studied business administration instead. "To do what?" "To learn how to invest in stocks and all that, you know, fun stuff." He crinkled his nose, which made me laugh. "What makes you happy the most?" I hadn't thought about this in a while. It seemed that lately Nothing truly made me happy. I glanced around for a moment at this humble, simple yard, so different from our family's manicured lawns. Here I was, cleaning out a chicken coop with a cute and sweet cowboy. This, I whispered truthfully, this makes me happy. He stopped raking and stood stock still, watching me, his gaze soft. Do you really mean it? It might be because of the company, I said, then lowered my eyes in a hurry. The smile that spread across his face made my heart beat faster. I cleared my throat. Do I get to ask you questions too? Sure, why not, he said. Keep going, we can take turns. Okay. He took the wheelbarrow from me and wheeled it away to a pile of other shavings. Then he turned it over with a pitchfork. Have you been to Colorado before? I nodded. Aspen, Vail, Telluride, ski trips. He whistled. I was sure he was thinking my family must have been loaded, and they were. What's your most favorite trip ever, and why? That counts for 2 questions, right? I have no idea how many we're up to. Me neither. He took a basket from a shed and motioned for me to follow him. Here's the fun part of chicken raisin. Want to gather eggs? Oh, yes. Oops, he shook his head. I just wasted another question. I felt generous. How about we give you 3 more questions and we'll call it good? I haven't wasted that many questions, he protested. I think you're just getting skittish like my brother Dylan's filly. I'm not scared, I jutted out my chin. You can ask me anything. He stared at me. Anything? Suddenly I got cold feet. Well, no backing out now. He smiled and handed me the basket. Opening a door on the outside of the coop, he leaned forward. There were 6 eggs in all, with 4 brown and the others a light shade of green. I was anxious to change the subject. What do you do with all these eggs? I asked, picking one up after another. They were smaller than your store-bought eggs. Eat them? That's way too many eggs. I would be sick of them in a hurry. McCoy shrugged. You get creative. Sure pays off, he winked. Builds up the muscles. My eyes drifted to his biceps and his torso, straining against that shirt material before skittering away. Okay, my next 3 questions, he said. I was done taking out the egg, so I held the basket and just waited. He looked cute thinking up questions. He looked cute, period. He swung his head up and looked into my eyes. Ready? Fire away. His eyes swiveled away for a moment and then back. Why did you run away? My heart pounded and I looked away. We had been getting on. Why did he have to waste his question on that, of all things, reminding me of life back home? Next question, I said. You said I could ask anything. You going back on your word now? I thought this was just a game. Which one? He asked, searching my eyes. The 20 questions or what's going on between us? I gripped the basket tight in my hands. Nothing is going on between us. Hurt filled his eyes. I guess I was mistaken. Pardon me. I wanted to apologize, to tell him I was lying, that I was scared. But wasn't this what I wanted him to do, to back off, so I could leave this roost free and clear? He glanced at the basket in my hand, and I handed it to him. Without meeting his eyes, I walked around him, both of us silent. That had been a close call. We were getting to be too much of friends. I couldn't risk that. He would never belong in my world, not while my parents had a say in it. Thinking of his disapproving brothers, I was sure I would never belong in his either.
Chapter 15. McCoy. I took the basket of eggs into the house. I could hear Tori following me. Suddenly, the friendship I thought we had built up from that silly 20 questions game blew up in our faces. Her secret was like a big piece of chicken wire between us, telling me to keep out. Hey, she said. I hesitated before turning to face her. She looked like she was raring for a fight, her eyes turbulent like clouds in a summer thunderstorm. I warned you that I may or may not answer your questions, she said. But now you're acting like a chicken who can't lay an egg. That would be a rooster. She pouted. It's not funny. I got brave all of a sudden. I wanted to see how far I could go needling her. No, it's not. Then why are you smirking? I must be enjoying watching you throw a tantrum. I am not throwing a tantrum. She stomped her boot. I can't wait to watch when you do. This is a tantrum, she said, grabbing the basket and dumping the eggs. They broke, the slime running all over my boots and the floor. Oh my, she said, looking down at the spectacular mess, her cheeks reddening. I'm sorry. She stared some more. I'm sorry. Stay here, don't move. She ran to the kitchen, making frantic noises, pulling and tearing and running back out to me. The egg whites and yolks were going to be hard to take off with just a dry paper towel. Probably best to get a bucket of warm water and soap, I suggested. I can get it. No, I made the mess. I should clean it. She came back with a bucket and more paper towel. I helped her mop up as much as we could, and then she made another trip to switch out the dirty towels with clean. When she came back with a bucket of clean, sudsy water, her face was streaked with tears. Stupid, stupid, she said. If you don't speak to me after this, I wouldn't blame you. She sniffled and scrubbed and made kind of a half-sob sound. Then, with tenderness that took my breath away, she picked up my hands and set them in the water. She ran her fingers over mine back and forth and then rinsed them. I let her lift my hands out of the liquid. One by one, she dried my fingers with paper towel. Each stroke left sparks across my skin. I was disappointed when she let me go. There. Thank you, I murmured. The least I could do. Her voice wobbled. And oh, those eggs wasted. Hey, I whispered. She wouldn't look at me. Tori. Her eyes still avoided mine. I lifted her chin with my finger. I had meant to just console her, to tell her that everything would be all right. My boots had seen worse days. There was a reason why the bed and breakfast had tile in the entry, and all sorts of comforting things. Instead, my brain got all jumbled up as she raised her tear-filled eyes to mine, wet trails on her cheeks. What had this woman gone through to make her run away to this dinky small town where a cowboy needled her about things that wasn't any of his business? Whatever it was, I didn't really care. I just wanted to kiss her better. Kiss her better. Kiss her. I shouldn't take advantage of a sad woman who was probably going to regret kissing me after this moment. After all, weren't we just pushing each other away? But then, her eyelids grew heavy, and she was staring at my mouth and moving closer and closer until we were just a breath away. And everything fell away. The mess, the eggs shells, the upturned basket, none of that mattered. Nothing but this strong desire to feel her lips under mine. Our mouths came together, her lips sliding soft and warm. The sensation burned slow, sweet, torturous. One kiss would not be enough, nor two, nor three. I needed a dozen, at least. She pulled back and blinked with wonder. I half expected her to stand and run off again, but she fell against me eagerly, her arms circling my shoulders and pulling her mouth to mine. I ran my fingers through her soft, silky hair and cradled the base of her head in my hand, deepening the kiss, and she moaned. In the middle of this heady sensation, I heard the front door ding and my brother's voice yelling, "Gunther, heel!" And then a shaggy dog whom I assumed was Gunther wedged himself between me and Tori, lapping up at the eggs on the tile.
Chapter 16. Tori. I was upstairs in the shower, leaving McCoy to deal with his brother. I had needed to change. The eggs stunk bad. But those kisses, oh my. As the warm waters sluiced over my skin, a tingle at the memory ran through my body. I was still kicking myself for pulling that little stunt over the eggs, but it had led to something totally unexpected. delicious, amazing. I turned off the water and stood there dripping, then dried myself off with the towel slowly. My entire being felt utterly alive. After I dressed in another outfit from the borrowing closet, I stared at my face, glowing from within, my eyes bright. I hadn't felt this happy in a long time. I had been scared, but now I was thinking that I could simply play it by ear. It was a little crazy, but could I pass up a chance for love? Love. Was that what this was? I chastised myself for overthinking things and instead got ready to rejoin McCoy. His brother Heath and that hooligan of a husky Gunther would also be there. The dog trainer, some dog trainer he was, made me feel a tad nervous, but I knew I could count on McCoy. I went downstairs feeling pretty in the prairie-style jersey dress. I'd gotten eggs off my boots pretty well, so at least I could no longer see traces of it. "What are you thinking, McCoy?" Heath said. His voice came from the direction of the kitchen, muffled but still audible where I was standing. I paused. "I think Tori's a sweet girl," McCoy said, "and I'm going to court her." I paused at the doorway, biting my lip. He wanted to court me? He was so sweet and old-fashioned. "You hardly know the woman," Heath continued to rag, making my fists ball in frustration. "For all you know, she's a grifter, a con artist." Yep, I was after McCoy's money. "Haven't you heard of women who pretend to have gobs of cash and then leave their boyfriends to foot the bill?" Heath asked. "Really? Pretty clever, those gals." "Heath," Sweet McCoy said, "if you're going to keep being this way about Tori, I'll have to ask you to leave right now, or we might be tempted to say things we don't mean." "Fine, I'll leave, but I want you to put her through the test. You'd mentioned about taking her to our Sunday dinner. Pops'll sniff a rat out." Tears stung my eyes. I waited for McCoy to defend me once again against his uncouth brother. 5 seconds passed, 10, and then McCoy answered. "You know what? Maybe this isn't such a good idea." What? He was backtracking already? My stomach sank. McCoy was giving in to his brother's badgering. I had thought better of him. "I agree 100%, Heath said. I could picture him nodding vigorously, his eyes lit up with evil triumph. But then, what did I really know of McCoy, other than he built coops well, he had a big loud family of brothers, and he kissed well? That last little bit made my knees woozy again, and then I pulled myself up. Disgusted, I walked to the front door and let myself out, gulping down lungs full of cold air. I looked down the lane, right and left, and picked right. I needed to walk to clear my head, to think. I was almost falling for him. I needed to walk to clear my head, or have it examined.
Chapter 17. McCoy. "Taking her to Sunday dinner isn't a good idea," I clarified. Heath put his fists on his hips. "Actually, I beg to differ. I think it's good for the family to check her out. Make sure she's not trying to con you." "Get out, Heath," I pointed to the door. "Well, it's true. Out." Heath left the kitchen and then poked his head back in. "See you both Sunday?" I balled the kitchen towel and threw it his way just as the door shut. After a few minutes, when I was feeling more in control, I went upstairs to talk to Tori. I knocked on her door. After a minute, when she didn't answer, I knocked again and said her name. Still no answer. Scratching my head, I looked down the hall, but there was no sign of her both directions. I thought about knocking again to make sure she was all right, but maybe she was napping. So I backed off and went downstairs. As I returned to the kitchen, I happened to look outside and caught a glimpse of Tori entering the chicken coop. Curious, I let myself out the back door. I sidled over to the side run where she stood with her back to me, towering over the biddies. "Hi, ladies," she said. The chickens clucked and strutted about, eyeing her curiously. "I wish I could be like you, just not worried about anything." The sadness in her voice was so raw. I should have probably revealed myself, but I was frozen in place. "After this week, I'd have my adventure, and then I'll get married to Alexander." So, his name was Alexander. My throat tightened with jealousy. "I would never fit in with McCoy's family anyway," she said. The chickens were starting to get brave around her, pecking closer and closer. "Who knows? Maybe I will have my fun while at it. They think I'm a gold digger chicken dinner. Oops, pardon me, that was just a joke. I guess I am in a way," she went on. "I've never had to work in my life. What good would I be around here with you? Back home, my family wants me. Alexander wants me. I would be a good wife to him and will be very happy. Yes, I will. Besides," she walked to the chicken wire enclosure wall and flattened her hands against it. "I don't belong here, and I never will." I had heard enough. If she thought she would be happiest with that Alexander, then that lucky fella had better take good care of her, because I was letting her go. Each step back to the house was slow and painful. Inside, I busied myself unloading the washing machine and transferring the linen to the dryer. At a bed and breakfast, there was always something to do, thankfully, or I'd want to punch the wall, let out steam. "Hi." I took a deep breath before turning. Tori was peeking at me from the laundry doorway. Despite what I had overheard, sweet feelings of affection flooded my heart once again upon seeing her smile. "Is there anything I can do to help?" she asked. I looked down at the linen to buy myself time. Around this woman, I couldn't think straight and had to remind myself that she was going back to Alexander. "Sure," I said, motioning for her to take up one end of the fitted sheet. "Want to help me fold this?" She nodded and caught the end as I fluffed the cloth. As it started coming down softly, revealing Tori's face, I was caught in a breathless moment. She pulled back slightly and then sneezed. It was a soft, cute sneeze. "Bless you," I said. She wrinkled her nose and smiled at me, making my traitorous heart skip a beat. I yanked my gaze away and pretended to be engrossed in the proper folding of the sheet, as if Althea would care. Steeling my heart against Tori. We folded the sheet in tandem, getting a bit confused as to which side needed to be where. We came together so that I could take her ends of the sheet. I was glad for it, to have a barrier to remind me that she was going back to her life after this, and I couldn't risk a broken heart. But I had made the mistake of looking up and catching her soft gaze watching me. It brought me back to that moment when she upturned the eggs and we'd kissed. "Thanks," I said gruffly, taking the sheet and sidestepping her so I could put it on the shelf. "You're welcome." When I turned, I caught her watching me, but it very well could have been my imagination because an indifferent mask came over her features. "Anything else?" I didn't trust myself around her. "You can fold the flat sheet if you want, and it goes up there." I pointed at the cupboard. "Okay." She bit her lip, that very movement mesmerizing me once again. "I think I can handle that." But just as she spoke, she was all thumbs with the sheet. She looked flustered. "It looked easier than I thought." I helped her fold it, taking care to not look up or touch her even as we came together. "Does this go in the same shelf as the other?" "Yep." She turned and looked up at the cupboard. She reached up to put it on the shelf, but she was a few inches too short. Looking around, she said, "Got a step stool around here?" "I got it," I said. I walked over and took the sheet from her. "I can do it," she objected, turning her face to mine in profile, both of us standing stock still. I swallowed. Our faces were just a breath away. I inhaled the sweet, fruity smell of her shampoo, her shiny hair tickling my nose. "Let me help you," I insisted, my voice gruff. "Fine," she said. She gave me a side glance through long, thick lashes and let me take the sheet. In order for me to reach the shelf, I needed to take a half step closer to her. Although we weren't touching, my body could sense the heat from hers. In a more perfect world, the sheet would be set aside. I would grip her arms gently and turn her eyes widening at my obvious intent, and then I would lower my mouth to hers so I could kiss her once again. But she had Alexander to go back to, and I was just a temporary stop along her journey. I cleared my throat and stepped back. The coolness of the air put a stop to the thoughts I might have continued to have. "I'm going to fix dinner," I announced. "Need help?" "No." I stared at her in panic. No. "Okay." She looked hurt. "I was just asking." She lowered her glance to her hands. "I guess it makes sense. You don't want me around to help with dinner." I gave her a questioning glance. "I heard you talking to your brother," she said. "I'd just as soon not come to your family Sunday dinner, being that I'm not welcome." "You heard us?" I felt bad. What had Heath said exactly? Nothing good at any rate. "I'm sorry you did." "Well, I'm not. I might as well know the lay of the land." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Your brothers think I'm a con artist, and yet you didn't defend me to them." "It's all talk," I said, waving my hand. Her voice was quiet. "Words can hurt." I stuffed my hands in my pockets. I probably should have commiserated with her while defending myself, but no, I veered off a different direction. "And what about Alexander?" Her eyes narrowed. "How did you know about him?" "I overheard you two, just now. You were telling my chickens what a prize he is." "Why would you eavesdrop on a private conversation I was having with your chickens?" "I didn't mean to. I just happened to hear everything." Hurt filled her eyes. "I guess we're even then." She turned around and ran out the room. I closed my eyes and breathed out deeply.
Chapter 18. Tori. I had stayed away as long as I could, but when it was dinner time, I thought I'd at least make an appearance. Whatever McCoy was cooking in the kitchen smelled terrific. He turned at my arrival, nodded without smiling, and turned back to fixing dinner. My heart sank. He and I were on the outs, and it hurt more than I thought it would. "Did I come too soon?" I asked. "No, it's okay. I'm almost done." I stayed as far away from him while still being close enough to talk and be polite. I wondered if he remembered I was in the room. He was cutting big squares in what looked like a pan of lasagna. "Sorry, it's nothing fancy like you're used to." There was an uncharacteristic edge to his voice. I was going to say something sarcastic, but bit my tongue. I couldn't imagine several more days of this awkwardness. He obviously didn't want to have anything to do with me. I was just a con artist needing to mooch off him and his family. "When is your brother and sister-in-law's family coming home?" I asked. "Monday," he said. I decided I would leave first thing that day. It would be best to not stay to meet them. I didn't think I'd want to endure another scathing character assassination by one of McCoy's brothers. McCoy set a steaming hot slice of lasagna with gooey, melty cheese on a plate and set it on the table, where a knife and fork were laid out on a white disposable napkin. "There you go," he said. I sat and inhaled the aroma of Italian spices, my mouth watering. I waited for him to dish up and sit across from me, but he only took his plate and started heading out the kitchen. "Aren't you going to sit with me?" I asked. "Nah." He averted his eyes. "I'm going to check on the chickens and eat out there." And then he made good on his promise and exited the kitchen. I stared back at the lasagna that had my mouth watering just minutes before. My appetite suddenly gone. Seriously? I guess I was right. He couldn't even stand my company. Like a dutiful guest, I wielded my fork, cut a piece out, and took a bite. It was the best lasagna I had ever tasted, I kid you not, even better than the dish I had prepared in Paris. The empty chair on the other side of the table reminded me that McCoy was out there, preferring the company of chickens over mine. I craned my neck and took a peek out the window. There he was, standing with Judith in the crook of his left arm, his right arm holding aloft his plate of lasagna. Feeling secure that he wouldn't be able to catch me staring, I set my arms on the windowsill and watched him. He had the chickens literally eating out of his hand, especially that Judith. His lips moved, as though he was telling her sweet nothings. He was nicer to his chickens than he was to me. I blinked back tears, and I slid back to my chair, eating my solitary dinner. The door opened, and in came Winnie. I was happy to see her. Of all his family I had met so far, she was the only one who didn't look upon me like a fox out to raid the coop. Oops, she really wasn't family yet. "Hi there," she said, her smile a bright white against her red lipstick. I admired her sense of style. Today she wore an orange and turquoise cowgirl blouse, tucked into slim jeans and a beautiful pair of etched brown boots. "I was at the store, and they had a sale on bread, so I thought I'd buy some extra for you guys." "Thanks." I admired the tassel swinging sassily on the back of her boot. "How many pairs of boots do you own?" "Not enough," she grinned, and then her gaze swept the room. "How come you're here by your lonesome self? Where's McCoy?" "Outside with his chickens?" I might have sounded a little bitter, but fortunately, Winnie didn't seem to notice. "What?" she frowned. "Couldn't they wait for his company after dinner?" "He's eating dinner with them." Winnie blinked, looking confused, and strode over to the window. "What do you know? He is. Have you guys had a falling out?" "No," I said in a hurry. Her narrowed eyes told me she wasn't a fool. So you did too. Over what?" "Over what, indeed? When his brother talked him out of giving me the time of day for fear that I was a gold digger. Yeah, that was it." "I don't know," I lied. "I think we've just been cooped up here so much, it's gotten to be too much for him." "Weird. I would have thought—" She stopped short and gave me a self-conscious smile. "Nothing." "What?" "I thought he liked you." "We've only just met," I protested. "In books, that's, insta-love. So unrealistic." Winnie studied me. "Right." She sauntered over to the counter, took a plate out of the cupboard, and dished up a slice of lasagna. "You mind if I join you?" "Please do." She dug into the lasagna and pointed at it with her fork. "Amazing, isn't it?" she said with full cheeks. "This is Althea's to die for recipe. You should ask her for it when she gets back." I cut a piece of lasagna with my fork. "I was thinking of leaving before she gets here." "That's a shame. Althea and Sheldon are both great, and their kids are cute." I could stay one more day, but that was one more day around McCoy, another day for me to fight my feelings for him, one day sooner to be with Alexander, who wanted me. "I figure that way my family could see me sooner," I pointed out, so they won't worry about me so much. Her fork stopped midway to her mouth, and then she ate the bite, considering me thoughtfully. After she chewed, she asked, "What about McCoy?" "What about him?" "I thought you and he were getting on well." "Enough not to want to throttle each other, you mean?" I joked. "More than just tolerating. Did he do something to hurt you?" Heath was on a tirade about me being a con artist, but McCoy didn't defend me. In fact, he said having me at the family's Sunday dinner was a bad idea. I told McCoy I overheard them, and then he shot back that he overheard me talking to his chickens. Winnie blinked. "Isn't that good? I was telling the chickens I would go back to Alexander." "Oops, right." Winnie took another bite of the lasagna. "But I thought you liked McCoy." "He had been very kind, but we're like poles apart. I don't belong here, Winnie." Her mouth formed a silent O. "None of my business, but I will ask it anyway. Why do you want to go back to Alexander?" I looked out the window, at the scraggly February day hinting at a wet spring. This was nothing like I was used to back home, and yet it had its own kind of beauty. I couldn't picture Alexander standing outside in a place like this in jeans and t-shirt. He belonged in a world I was familiar with. If I were to return to him, I might as well start talking him up in my mind. Well, there's plenty of reasons, I began. Winnie looked skeptical. I'm all ears.
Chapter 19. McCoy. I was a coward, I admit. I should have just stayed inside with Tori and eaten dinner, not made a big deal of being with her. However, I was only human, and every moment spent with her was like torture. Being close and not able to touch her, seeing her lips move and not being able to kiss her. I sighed. It was time to come in and get on with the day. After petting Judith, I set out to return to the house. The kitchen door was slightly open and Winnie's SUV was parked in the driveway. And then I remembered she'd offered to get some groceries while she was at the store. Good. Having Winnie around would make it less awkward with Tori. I was about to enter the kitchen when I heard Winnie say, "Why do you want to go back to him?" I froze at the steps and listened. I was getting real good at this eavesdropping. "Well, there's plenty of reasons," Tori said. "I've known Alexander a long time, since we were kids. He gave me a lot of my firsts. My first date, my first dance." "First kiss?" "No, not that." Good. I should have turned away, but I was a masochist, and I truly wanted to know what this guy had that I didn't. "He reminds me a lot of my daddy." Tori sounded wistful. "Driven, successful, smart. He'll take good care of me." "Do you have fun with him?" "Sure. He's taken me to lots of fun places. We've traveled together and haven't killed each other yet." "Okay, maybe you have a good point there. But does he make you laugh?" "I'll admit he needs some doing in that department. He doesn't have a great sense of humor. He kind of takes life seriously. I tease him he was born wearing a suit." "Girl, he sounds like a chump." I could picture Winnie grimacing, and I agreed. The guy sounded boring. "He's safe," Tori said. Safe? Was that what Tori wanted in life? Safety? If she dumped Alexander, could I give her the safety she wanted? Running my own business meant freedom and creativity, but it certainly didn't guarantee a certain income per month. Most of the time business was booming, but there had been months when, because supply was held up at the lumber mill, I wasn't getting as much income in. I'd learned pretty early to save up for lean months. "So is not leaving your house," Winnie said. "Doesn't sound like too much fun." "The decision's not up to me," Tori said. "Who is it up to?" "It's up to the guy who wants me." "What kind of crazy thinking is that?" "Well, I mean, Alexander wants me." "And McCoy doesn't?" I leaned closer to hear her answer, but the stupid phone ringing drowned out whatever she said. "I want you. Yes, I do." I entered, but instead of being able to declare this, I had to answer the phone. Someone wanted to reserve a room the following month. After the call, Winnie got up as though to leave, leaving me in a panic. I would be alone once again with Tori. But Winnie was asking, "Want to go riding with me and Patrick?" She was looking at me and Tori. "On a bareback bronc?" I joked. "That's right." Winnie gave me an exasperated glance. "I'll put you on one. Seriously, though, we can take out the young'uns and put more miles on saddle." "All right," I said reluctantly. She glanced at Tori. "Tell me you'll come." Tori darted a nervous look my way. "I don't know." "You've ridden before, haven't you?" Winnie asked. "Yes, I have." "Then you should be fine." "But what about the B&B?" Tori asked. "A couple of hours will hardly cripple it," Winnie deadpanned. "Besides, it's not like you have guests right now." Tori bit her lip and nodded. Winnie looked from me to Tori and chirped, "It'll be fun." Like indigestion was fun. "Dress warm," Winnie told Tori. "It's not full-on winter, but there will still be snow." Tori's eyes revealed a blip of excitement. I wondered if she was thinking of our conversation earlier about snow on the mountains. But then her gaze landed on me, and her expression turned serious, thoughtful. Obviously, she wasn't excited about riding with me.
Chapter 20. Tori. If I had any doubts as to whether or not McCoy wanted to be with me, his reluctance over riding with me solidified it. I sat in the front seat of Winnie's front-runner, grateful that we were riding with another couple. Otherwise, this would have been so awkward. Patrick's property was a little further down the road. It was a homey-looking cabin with a bachelor vibe, a no-frills log house with 2 stories. "Do you live hereabouts?" I asked Winnie. "Nope, I live on Main Street in an old home passed down in our family." "That sounds cool." "Yes, most of the time, when the house isn't trying to fall down." A couple of sheepdogs greeted us and left me alone when commanded by their owner, who stood at the porch leaning against the post. "What's this?" Patrick said, looking from me to Winnie. "We playing cards or something?" "Better than cards," Winnie said, circling his waist with her arms. "We're taking Tori on a trail ride." Patrick put his hand on the small of her back possessively. It was hard to imagine the two not being married anytime soon. They already acted like it. "I take it you dragged McCoy along too?" Winnie batted her lashes like some innocent, "Yep, or he'd be sitting home bored." Patrick raised an eyebrow, a silent message passing between the couple. "Let's go now, then. I gotta practice some more later today." Winnie grinned. "Perfect." Patrick wheeled her around and kissed her full on her mouth. Thinking of a certain kiss, I didn't dare look over at McCoy. We gathered the horses from the pasture in the back. The ranch wasn't fancy, but it sure was sprawling. It was an impressive spread that went on and on into a line of trees abutting the foothills. "I was thinking she could ride Rafiki," Winnie said. "What do you think, Patrick?" "I don't know." He looked at me. "Do you like to ride slow or feisty?" "I don't want a dead horse," I retorted, "if that's what you mean by slow." "He's just lazy, is all. Let's put her on Queenie." Queenie was a flea-bitten gray horse with a bit of a sway back, but she had an alertness about her that was contagious. "You look like a natural," McCoy said. He was watching me as I adjusted my seat and pushed down into my boots to straighten the saddle. My cheeks warmed at the compliment. "Thanks, I ride back home." He was studying me, speculatively. "What?" I said. "Well," he leaned deep into his saddle on a handsome young horse named Mick. "I was going to ask you more questions, but I think my 20 questions ran out." "Yes," I said lightly, "that privilege expired." It was meant as a joke, but I felt kind of sad that I couldn't talk freely with him. Another day wouldn't have made a huge difference. I could have told them my identity and my family wouldn't be able to track me down so fast. But I didn't want to have to answer questions like Alice down the rabbit hole. We started our trail ride from the back pasture, covered with brush and wintered over plantings. The sun warmed my back and the breeze cooled my face. I hadn't felt this good in a long time. Winnie and Patrick set off ahead, by themselves, leaving me with McCoy a little ways behind. I wouldn't put it past Winnie if that had been her grand design the entire time. "Enjoying yourself?" McCoy asked me. Points to him for trying to be nice and polite. I nodded. I forgot that I've been missing being able to ride. "Me too. As much as I think Winnie can sometimes be bossy, I'm glad she forced me to go out today." I watched the pair riding ahead. Patrick's lucky to have her. "You got that right. I think he's the last person to know that. Patrick's a bit dense. Maybe it'll take some big thing to shake him up and look at her in a different way. I hope not, but you may be right." He glanced at me, then away. Our horses' gaits had fallen into a nice rhythm, and I simply enjoyed the sound for several minutes. "What's the first thing you'll do when you go back to your life?" McCoy asked, breaking the silence. His question reminded me too much of leaving here, and I didn't want to have to think about it too much. "See the horses," I said. "Who's your favorite?" Princess, I smiled. She's a black Andalusian, McCoy whistled. Sounds pretty. She is, and a bit spoiled, as in, she lives in a barn and gets exercised by staff. McCoy was quiet for a minute. I can't even picture life like that, to have a horse staff. That's just my life, I grimaced. Sorry. Hey, it's okay. I think it's cool if your family has money to burn. He winced. I'm just putting my boot in my mouth, aren't I? I smiled to myself, but didn't answer. Good for you, he continued. It can be. I won't deny that as I've grown up, I've enjoyed many things, lavish trips, amazing experiences. I squinted against the sun at McCoy, with his tan skin even in the winter. He looked almost Spanish, Mediterranean. That dinner with your family, I said, you get together every Sunday? Pretty much, unless there's some other event going on, or like with Sheldon when people are out of town. Patrick misses quite a bit when he's on the road. You're lucky, I said. My family doesn't spend a ton of time together. He sent me a curious glance. No Sunday dinners? Not with Daddy most nights. He works a lot. I moved out of my parents' house a while back, but I still spend most evenings with my mom. And your boyfriend. You spend time with him? I sighed. When he could get away. Truth is, I saw him about as often as Daddy. I pictured our lives together, or rather not together, when Alexander was away brokering deals. Mom and I could do retail therapy together. The thought depressed me. Did you and he have a fight or something? McCoy asked. Was that why you ran away? You could say that, I said, but didn't explain further. The mention of Alexander brought a pall to the conversation. We rode without talking for several minutes, coming upon the thicket of gnarly trees and weaving around what looked like spiny trunks. I could see McCoy here and there when he wasn't screened by the trees. Winnie and Patrick were well ahead of us, faintly visible in what looked like an open clearing. And then I felt a little drop on my sleeve, on my head. I looked up above. Was it hailing? I glanced at McCoy, who had a suspiciously calm smile on his face. Wait a minute. I noticed there were overwintered seeds on the tree branches. I gave him a wilting smile. Really now? Very mature. He raised his hand, full of these seeds, and pelted me with a bunch. I gasped as a slew of them hit me squarely on my arm. A couple even shimmied down the neck of my borrowed coat. What are these trees, anyway? I asked to buy time as I coaxed my horse close to a tree, subtly grabbing seeds off a branch. Russian olives, he said. Careful, there's... A thorn pricked my finger. Ow! Spines. I noticed. As I recovered, I grabbed a handful of seeds off a little thornless branch and pressed my knee on Queenie's flank to make her move faster. She could sense my excitement and was perfect for my mission, just as McCoy's mount picked up speed, too. He was a good aim, but I was a good rider. With satisfaction, I dodged his missiles. He whistled, making Queenie stop in her tracks. I took a couple on my nape and back before I could lob an answering shot. No fair, I said. You can't meddle with my horse. Excuses, excuses. I stuck my tongue out at him and threw a handful, pell-mell, showering him with seeds. Bet you can't catch me. He grinned, and then the chase was on. I was sure he was going to send some missiles my way, but he cut me off, preventing Queenie from moving away. We were breathing hard and laughing, our horses prancing around each other. He hooked my waist with his right arm, and so our horses were facing the opposite ends. Gotcha. Time slowed, and I could see every detail of his handsome face. He had a tiny scar over his lip, and I wondered how he had gotten it. His eyes also held scars, and fear, mirroring how I felt. Could he be the one for me? I wanted him to be so badly, and yet back at the B&B, he had said I wasn't worth pursuing. For a moment, though, the fear abated, replaced by a familiar yearning that made me want to take a risk. My hair had swirled all around my shoulders and had gotten caught between my lips. I watched with fascination as he raised his hand to my cheek, his finger tracing the side of my face, dislodging the strand. The expression in his eyes intensified. His hand returned to cup my jaw, his thumb circling my skin that felt like it was exploding in sparks. And then he let me go. We should probably catch up with the others, he said gruffly. I stayed back for a minute to gather my wits about me and tapped Queenie slightly to keep moving, my emotions all roiled up. Winnie caught up with me on the way back. "I saw you back there," she said, "chasing each other around like a cute couple. Who won?" "Of course I did." I made Queenie prance. She laughed. "McCoy could be mean with his shot. Good job." Obviously, he's losing his touch. But all I could think of was his fingers on my heated skin.
Chapter 21. McCoy. We returned to the B&B at dark to a newlywed couple pulling in from Nebraska. I checked them in while Tori volunteered to make sure everything in their room was ready. We passed Tori as I helped the honeymooners bring up their luggage. They didn't even wait for me to close the door before they were all over each other. I headed downstairs feeling a little pang of envy for the couple, that they could be so openly in love with each other, not like me and a certain woman with emerald eyes. I thought back to the ride with Tori. It had been a lot of fun, especially during the Russian olive race. Alexander was a lucky man. I sure wanted to punch him in the face. I shut my eyes for a minute and shook my head clear of this nonsense. Tori was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. "Everything okay upstairs?" They could have been in a cardboard box and they'd have been very happy. They're so in love, aren't they? At the word love, our glances met and held. "Obviously," I said, looking away and heading back to the office. "I'm going to get ready for bed," Tori called out after me. "Unless you need me." "I need you. I need you to complete me. I thought I had all that I needed here in life, but I didn't realize what I was missing until you came." The words formed in my head, even as I recognized the futility of that feeling. I hadn't dared look at her, but now I did, keeping my expression neutral. "I'm good." She gave me a sweet, tired smile and started to climb the stairs. "Tori." She turned and leaned over the rail, watching me. I wanted to tell her what I really felt, that I wanted a chance before she chose to cast her lot with Alexander the Great, but I chickened out at the last moment. "Tomorrow," I said, "if you'd like, you can help me set up the breakfast buffet." The offer sounded so lame. Her face fell. Sure." "Well," I nodded, all businesslike. "Have a good night." A tired smile flit across her beautiful face. "Thank you."
Chapter 22. Tori. I woke to a beautiful sunrise. For several minutes, I watched flocks of blackbirds flitting through the sky, swooping in playful patterns. With it being Sunday, I wondered about church. Back home, I'd have gone to a service at noon, and then I remembered that I was helping prepare the buffet. I tossed the covers off me and hustled to get ready. Just because I was needed downstairs, not that I was excited to see McCoy or anything. "Good morning," McCoy greeted me as I entered the kitchen. He was dressed like a cook with an apron and all. The combination of muscles and domesticity was an oddly sexy, appealing look. I averted my eyes and approached the kitchen island. "Good morning. What are we cooking?" "Pancakes, scrambled eggs, and bacon." He had already mixed the pancake batter. I offered to cook and flip them. He whistled admiringly as my first one turned out pretty near perfect. "Usually the first one is the sacrificial pancake," he said, looking impressed. "That's luck for you," I admitted. After a stack of normal ones, we went a little crazy and started making shapes. We had each other guess, which turned into belly laughs because apparently our pancake sculpting abilities were pathetic. We set up the buffet in chafing dishes and waited. To pass the time, I washed the dishes and swept the floor. Not my usual daily activity, but it felt satisfying to tidy up. An hour later, the couple still hadn't come down. "I think they're going to stay up there forever," I said. "My guess, too. What time is your church?" "In an hour, at 10. "I can wait for them to come down," I offered. "Then you can go." He darted a surprised glance at me. "That's sweet of you, but no, I won't leave you here by yourself. Tell you what, Let me call them." He got on the phone and greeted them cheerfully. "I was wondering if you'd like room service this morning." "Oh, you do? Perfect. Be right up." We loaded up 2 trays and climbed the stairs to the guest's room. "Just leave the food there," a man said through the door, followed by a giggle. With our job done, McCoy told me to meet downstairs at 1:45. I went through the loaner closet and found a pretty cream wrap dress with see-through long sleeves and a flounce at the hem. I also grabbed an olive green trench coat that looked invitingly warm and draped it over my arm. On my way down the stairs, I paused. McCoy was standing at the landing like a country gentleman in a sport jacket, a tie over a white shirt and gray slacks with western boots peeking out. He glanced up and did a double take, almost making me miss a step. As I reached him, McCoy's gaze admired me from head to toe. "You look beautiful." "Thanks." He motioned to the door. "Shall we?" I nodded and started to shrug into the trench coat. McCoy moved so he could stand behind me. "May I?" My senses revved up with his nearness, his arms on either side of me, his breath warm on my cheek. "Thank you," I murmured, raising my eyes to his. He moved as though to run his hand the length of my arm, but only stepped away. We came out of the B&B into the bright spring sunshine. As we passed his truck, he explained, "The church is just a 10-minute walk from here." We walked alongside on the dirt road, lined with dried grasses and ground cover that was starting to green up. He stopped in his tracks and gestured for me to stand still, plucking a little budding flower. He handed it to me. We were standing toe-to-toe, so close. I had to angle my face to see his, but the sun was in my eyes, dazzling me. Or maybe it was the fact that he was near me. I savored the smell of the flower and kept walking, every fiber of my being aware of his nearness. "I wish you could have met my mom," he said. "She loved flowers, too." "What was she like?" "She brought softness into our home. Beauty. She was a photographer, an artist. It took us forever to get places because she always liked to stop and draw, or if she had her camera, take a picture." He studied me. "What's your mom like?" "She likes tea parties and flowing dresses, classical music and art. Her favorite thing to do in the evenings is to curl up with a good book with a light blanket over her lap." "What's your daddy like?" "He's gruff, with a booming voice. Everyone's scared of him." "Are you?" He glanced at me. "On things that matter most, but on everything else, he lets me get away with most anything." "Daddy's girl, are you?" "Until recently, when I've pushed back on what he's wanted for me." McCoy was silent for a minute. "Like marrying Alexander." I nodded. "Like marrying Alexander. He thinks Alexander will protect me from all our competitors. I'm the presumptive heir to his business empire, so he wanted us to marry." "Why not just have Alexander assume the reins without having to marry you?" "Because that wouldn't be the same. Alexander wouldn't be family, and we wouldn't have his full loyalty. At least that's Dad's theory." "Do you want to run his business empire?" "Not really, but I'll do it to preserve my dad's legacy. He worked so hard to reach it." "What would you do instead, if you didn't have to take the helm?" I kicked at a pebble and put my hands behind my back. It's going to sound lightweight, but I just want to be a wife and mom. I have no ambition. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. It sounded dumb when I said it that way. "That's a pretty good ambition." McCoy glanced at me and away. "That's what my mom did. I mean, I have my investments and my hand in a few things with the business. I have a degree in business administration in case I need it. But I haven't really found my passion yet, I guess." I cocked my head at him, curious. "When did you know you would build chicken coops?" "I don't exactly know." I punched his shoulder playfully, and he yelped with a grin. "Like I told you once," he said, his eyes still lit up. "It just kind of fell in my lap. Growing up, I'd always wanted to build things. I took Pop's scrap wood and made barns and outbuildings for our plastic animals. Later, I started making things for neighbors so I could get money for hunting and guns. I suppose I'd known for a long time I would be a craftsman." "That makes me jealous." "What does?" "That you needed to work to get money. I know that sounds odd." "And you didn't?" "Not at all," I smiled wryly. "Don't judge. I won't. You're lucky is all. Was I? McCoy seemed even luckier than me. The road led up to a little church on the left-hand side. Speaking of blessings, will I meet the whole town here? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Families were streaming in, many of them looking back at us with curiosity. Definitely the gathering place. McCoy cast a worried glance at me. We'll sit by my family. Do you mind? Of course not. If we didn't sit with them, they'd probably wonder. Sitting with them comes with its own complications, McCoy murmured. Huh? McCoy searched for words. People tend to jump to conclusions. You know, they might think you and I have the blessing of the family and you're sitting with us, so a light bulb went on in my head. We're together? Yep. We're not, though. That is so true. I sized him up to see if he was being sarcastic, but his expression was serious. Might as well brave it. McCoy worked the crowd like a small-town politician. Hello, Mrs. McGuire. And who is this young lady? Mrs. McGuire asked, eyeing me. My friend, Tori. Tori? Mrs. McGuire. Hello, I said, alarmed slightly when the old lady grabbed my arm. I caught a whiff of mothballs. He's a treasure, this McCoy, Mrs. McGuire said. He fixed up my coop for me. I can't afford one of his nicer ones, so he just shored up my oldie, and it's as good as new. Oh, good, I said, patting her hand. Mrs. Smith reminded him about coming over with eggs. Mrs. Dunn thanked him for her coop's new run. Now none of those pesky raccoons are able to get in. Finally, we reached the pew where a row of handsome cowboys in various degrees of resemblance to McCoy sat. They looked up at our approach, almost scaring me into running off. Patrick and Heath I knew, of course, and they weren't exactly sending me welcoming vibes. An older gentleman, whom I assumed was the patriarch, said, "So this is Tori." Winnie, sitting beside Patrick, winked at me. I felt a surge of courage and attempted a smile. There was no time for more chit-chat. The service was about to begin. The pastor cast a direct glance my way, announcing a warm welcome to all our visitors. I slid into the bench with McCoy forming the bookend. The bench was quite crowded, but so were the rest of the benches. McCoy was sitting right abutted against me, the warmth of his hip burning through my dress. His arm was kind of wedged in an uncomfortable angle between us. He raised his arm and put it over my shoulders. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I could get up and move to another bench if you'd like." "No, it's okay," I said, whispering back, and listened to the preacher. Tried to, anyway. All I was aware of was his arm across my shoulders and his masculine scent with him sitting so close. Occasionally, we sang from the same hymn book, his beautiful tenor voice hitting the right notes. The whole service was a heavenly experience. That is, if I didn't have the complication of returning home to Alexander. After church, the family waited outside for us. It had taken several minutes for us to get through the crowd, fielding questions like, "Who is this young lady? How long are you staying for? Is this your girlfriend?" And with each question, McCoy was like a saint, not losing patience. As we approached the family, I plastered on a smile that probably looked more scared than friendly. McCoy turned to me. "Tori, this is my family, Pops and my brothers." I knew I wouldn't remember anyone's names, but paid attention anyway when he rattled them off. "Of course you know Patrick and Heath." They both tipped their hats. "This is Dylan and his daughter Tater." I smiled at the little girl with unruly bangs and a lot of spunk in her eyes. "Your name's kind of close to mine," she said. "Tater's a cute name. It's short for Tabitha," she grimaced, making Tori smile. "Mine's short for Victoria." Tater's eyes widened. "It's like a doll name." "This here is Chandler," McCoy continued. "Thinks he knows a thing or two about building houses or something." Chandler puffed his chest out. "I taught him all I know about building. And, of course, this here is our Pops." "Nice to meet you, young lady," Pops said, shaking my hand warmly. Though he was considerably older than his sons, he still had an attractive glint about him. "So you have 6 sons," I said, doing the math. "Yes, that's right. Have you met Sheldon yet? He makes the 6th. "No, sir." His eyes twinkled. "Call me Travis. Won't you join us for supper tonight?" I hadn't received the official invitation, and I knew very well how 2 of McCoy's brothers felt about me joining them. But this was Travis Brown's deal, and he had more say over it than his sons. "I would love to," I said. I wished I could say I looked forward to it too. but catching Patrick and Heath's reserved expressions reminded me that it would also serve as some sort of audition.
Chapter 23. McCoy. That introductory meeting with my family went better than expected. Everyone was friendly, and even Patrick and Heath laid off on the eye-rolling and snide remarks. Truth be told, I think they were bowled over by Tori and her effortless charm. Back at the B&B, as I changed out of my suit into something clean but not as stiff, I thought back to how I had to sit so close to Tori at the church. Her leg had abutted mine so closely on that pew, unruly thoughts plagued me when I should have been paying attention to the preacher. But more than that, it felt natural sitting beside her, worshiping. I enjoyed church and feared God. It was nice to meet a woman who felt the same way. I didn't like how my thoughts were wandering, so I wiped them out of my brain. Tori had beat me to the landing and was talking to the newly wedded couple like a pro. I stopped at the top of the stairs to watch her in action. She was welcoming and chatty, making them feel at home. "We'll be wandering all over your beautiful countryside," the husband said, putting an arm around his wife. "Don't wait up for us." "Have fun," Tori waved them off. I continued going down the steps just as she glanced at me. Her eyes lit up and a smile spread across her face. My heart squeezed with pain thinking of the time when I no longer would be seeing her around. After today, in fact. "I can see why your sister-in-law loves running this bed and breakfast," she said, as I joined her on the landing. "It's fun making people feel at home." "She's always looking for someone to help around here," I blurted out before realizing how stupid that sounded. "Sorry, I know you said you didn't need the money." Her cheeks turned pink. "It would be fun, but home is a long ways from here." A home with Alexandra as her husband by her side. "True," I said, trying to scuttle the brooding thoughts that plagued me. "Ready for more of my brothers?" She took a deep breath. "I'll be honest, I'm nervous as can be, but let's do this." We talked in my truck about piddly little stuff, but I could tell that Tori's mind was elsewhere. She was a bit fidgety, shifting here and there, looking out the window this way and that, and in general not paying full attention to the conversation. When we pulled up at Pops's ranch, she looked at the house with apprehension, with that telltale lip biting. I covered her hand with mine, and she turned to look at it for a surprised second. "You'll do great," I assured her. She smiled. "Thanks." Right then and there, I had another chance to say something, to stake my claim on this girl whom I was becoming attached to. But the sight of my brothers streaming out of the house curtailed my opportunity. I lifted my hand and got out to open her door. Tater led the contingent, smiling cutely at Tori and offering her little hand to take. "Do you want to see my new horse?" Tori darted an amused glance at me. "I would love to." "Don't take too long," Tater's dad said. "Your Gramps is getting the steaks out of the grill." "Okay, Daddy." As we walked on, Tater kept up a prattle. "Uncle McCoy's already seen Daisy. Don't you think she's the prettiest?" "She sure is," I agreed. We stopped at a back pen next to Pops's forging workshop and corrals. A dainty bay Arabian pranced at our approach. "Hey there, pretty girl." Tori cooed from the rail and set out her hand to connect with Daisy's muzzle. "How old is she?" Tori asked. "She's 4. "Oh, so she's full grown. So petite." Tater nodded. "Daddy says she'll stay little 'cause she's an Arabian." "I love Arabians," Tori said. "They're so little but have big hearts." "I know, right?" Tater agreed. "She never tires out on our trail rides, even when we loop up and down the mountain, 'cause under saddle is a different story. Daddy says she's a little hot, but I'll keep working with her until she's the best horse." Tori smiled. "No doubt." I studied the two heads that were close together, the woman's and the child's, and a longing so strong hit me. I wanted Tori to stay and make memories with Tater, with my family, with me. I wanted to take her up on more trail rides, up to the hidden springs where we could cross with the horses and swim under the falls in the summer. I wanted to take her down to Old Man Garrig's farm to pheasant hunt and to the harvest ball, twirling her to Eli Hawk's country band. I looked away and reminded Tater to finish up so he could join the others. I didn't wait for them. Instead, I went walking up ahead. That way I didn't have to see them together, making my heart ache with silly wishes. But I could hear them talking. Tater's exuberant voice carried loudly. "You're so pretty." "Thank you. My daddy says that you'll be leaving soon." Yes, I will be." "Will you come back to watch me at my 4-H show? That'll be in the spring." "I wish I could. I will have to see." "That'll be great. Uncle McCoy comes to my shows. He helps me get Daisy ready for showing." "Really? I thought he only likes chickens." "Correction," I said, falling back into step with them. "Chickens like me. I like them and other farm animals." Tori smiled and asked Tater, "Do you have chickens too?" "Not yet. As soon as Uncle McCoy builds me a coop, Daddy says I could have them." "What? You've kept your niece waiting?" Tori mock glared at me. I know. She's next on my list." We smiled at each other over my niece's head. I looked away first, my heart a coil of mixed emotions. We entered Pops's farmhouse to the chaos and commotion of a brown Sunday supper. Winnie was in the kitchen directing the production of the sides like an army general. I leaned over and dipped my finger into the twice-baked potatoes and got smacked on the back of my head for all my trouble. "I already tasted it," Chandler said. "No need to dip your finger in it too." "You guys," Winnie said, taking the tempting dish away from our vicinity. Tori was drawn into several conversations already in progress, handling each one with ease. She answered questions, laughed at jokes, and generally looked like she belonged. If only she belonged to me. Pops entered with a large platter of juicy-looking steaks, trailed by a couple of hounds that didn't even belong to him. I suspected they were new ones that Heath was training for his buddies, and I was right. He told them to sit, and they sat their butts down, but not for long. The steaks were a moving target. Eventually, Heath banished them out back. "Hello, Tori." Pops greeted her before setting the steaks on the table. Winnie was sitting calmly, deceptively so because the good-looking spread only really happened under her capable direction. Everyone looked about ready to eat grub, but Pops had more to say. "Everyone remember that it's your sweet mama's birthday next week." There were nods all around. "If any of you would like to come, I'll be stopping by your grave on Tuesday before dinner." A chorus of "I cans" ensued, including mine. Pops nodded, looking pleased, and then he turned to me. "Bless the food, McCoy." "Sure thing." I bowed my head and prayed. I prayed over the food to make us stronger. I prayed that Pops would continue being healthy, that my brothers would all be successful in their work, and that our friend Tori would find happiness. I opened my eyes to a murmuring of amens. To my right, Tori touched my arm. Her eyes were shining with tears. "Thank you." "You are welcome. And I meant it too. If Alexander made her happy, I wished him for her."
Chapter 24. Tori. All around me, the brothers erupted in trash talking, random jokes, and generally happy sounds of healthy appetites being satisfied. The food smelled good, and there was not a doubt in my mind that it was delicious. But I had to pause to get my bearings, overwhelmed as I was by this experience of being with the Browns for Sunday dinner. "Why aren't you eating?" Tater asked to my right. "You know how you go to the candy store and you get all your favorites and you don't want to just eat it right away, but you pick your favorite and take your time?" She blinked. I just eat all the candy in one swoop, I laughed. Well, I would too, depending on what it is. But yeah, she smiled. I guess I've saved some candy for later. And then it's hard to get myself to eat it. Exactly. I cut a slice of steak and put the morsel in my mouth. Ah, it was perfection. I looked around the room to see if anyone was watching, and sure enough, McCoy was. He gave me a knowing look. Pop's specialty is steaks. Early on, even before he and Mom got hitched. I can believe it. I looked down the table at his dad. Travis, the steak is amazing. Travis waved away my compliment. You can butter me up anytime. Funny thing, though, Chandler chimed in. He about burns anything in the oven. Travis just laughed it off. Oh, yes, I can't seem to focus lately. I tend to forget to check on things without Mom. An uncomfortable silence descended upon the table. I watched as this rowdy band of cowboys turned quiet. What about you, Tori? Travis said. What do you like to do? I like to travel, I guess. On an airplane? Tater said, her eyes growing wide. Yes, on an airplane. Tater took another bite and nodded. I've never been on a plane. Is it scary? Not really. The little girl looked past me to McCoy. Uncle McCoy's never been on one before either. I looked at him for confirmation, and he was nodding. Yep. Seriously? I sputtered. You'll have to go sometime. No place to travel to, I guess. You could go to Texas. His eyes bore into mine. Texas? Now why should I go there? No reason, I said, yanking my gaze back to my plate, kicking myself for saying too much. Dinner was wonderful, but the company even more so. Tater took it upon herself to entertain me, telling me about horses and asking about my horses. I could see myself being friends with this sweetheart, and with the rest of the brothers. And yes, even Patrick and Heath. Too bad to continue to see them. I'd have to date McCoy.
Chapter 25. McCoy. I took out the trash after dinner and paused on the porch before coming in. The sun had set already and darkness had fallen over the ranch, but the sky was a bright blue still, showing off the beginning pinpricks of stars. Was she from Texas? I kind of played that little snippet of conversation over in my mind, but then I guess I wouldn't ever find out, would I? Doesn't ever grow old, does it? I turned to see Dylan standing in the doorway. Beyond him, framed by the door, everyone was sitting around the family room, playing a boisterous game of spoons, everyone including Tori. Nope. I turned back to the night sky. She's real cute, Dylan said. I wasn't shocked he was out here as sort of a family emissary to talk some sense into me. That's how we as brothers rolled. And I don't mean just looks, Dylan added. She could make a good mom for Tater, I said. They seem to get along well. Or aunt, better yet. I stayed silent. Patrick and Heath told us this wild story that she's staying with you at Althea's, kind of like working for lodging. You heard right. Sounds cozy and romantic, the two of you under the same roof. Far from that, I winced. She's got a boyfriend back home. Ah, I didn't hear about that part. Then Winnie must not have given you the lowdown. Nope, just the guys. He paused. She in love with him then? I guess. He's a safe choice at any rate. Huh. Tater's horse seems to be doing good, I said. Don't change the subject, McCoy. Amusement laced Dylan's voice. I took a deep breath and kept my eyes on a bright star out of my reach. There's nothing to talk about. She's leaving tomorrow, and that's that. And she's breaking your heart by doing so. Nah, I lied. Besides, it's not about me. It's about what makes her happy. In the darkness of the porch, with his muscular upper body and that frown, Dylan looked almost menacing. She said that? I must have read her wrong. I said that. I want her to be happy. I swallowed painfully. Even if it means her marrying a different guy. I don't know, Dylan shrugged. Maybe I'm totally off base, but I think she likes you. Get out of here. but his words licked at me like a hopeful flame. "I've seen her look at you. There's no mistaking the look of a woman in love." I really wanted to believe him. I wish he were right. "And there's also plenty of clueless cowboys out there." Dylan grinned, ruffling my hair. "Like you." I jerked away from his touch, reminding him I'm no longer the baby brother. "You saying I'm clueless?" "I think you know very well how she feels. You're no dumbbell. The question is, are you going to do something about it?" "There's the little matter of this other guy. I hear he's loaded." "Is that shorthand for jerk?" "Not necessarily. Heaven knows I'm just a coop builder." "Who's grown his business every year? You waiting for that windfall before you settle down?" "Are we talking marriage now?" I shook my head and gave him a skeptical look. "Look who's talking. It's been nearly 8 years now since Jessie passed, and you have yet to go on a date." "That's beside the point." Dylan's voice was quiet. "As for Jessie, I met her when I was 18, remember? Love at first sight. I didn't let that one pass me by, you better believe it." I felt his eyes on my profile. "And if I were you, little brother, I wouldn't let Tori pass you by either." I stuffed my fists in my pockets as I drove Tori home, Dylan's words still ringing in my head. He wasn't being fair. Tori and I were about as different as night and day. She was a luxury coupe and I was a dinky little box. She would go back to her life and marry Alexander while I stayed here messing with chickens. Someday, maybe someday, I might meet someone like Tori. Maybe not as rich, which would make whoever that was more suited for a small-town cowboy like me. "That was fun," Tori said, breaking into my sad thoughts. "Good, I'm glad. Thanks for sharing your family with me." "Any time." The word had slipped out. It was a foolish choice of words. "I could just pop in here any time and see your family?" she teased. My heart pounded. Was she being serious? A smile played around her lips and I knew she was kidding. "Yep, for sure." We were quiet the rest of the way until the B&B was within sight. The guest's car was parked in the lot. "We beat them to it." "Looks like," she said. I thought about saying that she should consider coming here for her honeymoon, but of course I said no such thing. In fact, I didn't know what to say next. I didn't want the night to end yet. I wanted to keep her and me talking, but I couldn't think of any excuses to keep her out. I opened her truck door and I followed her to the front porch. She turned then, looking up at the heavens that I had been admiring over at Pop's. The moon had risen, casting a lovely glow on her profile. "This place will always be magical to me," she said. Her voice was low and quiet, and I had to strain to hear her. My throat burned. As soon as she left the next day, she would take the magic with her. "I'll never forget you, McCoy." With that, she turned and fled inside, leaving me standing alone.
Chapter 26. Tori. I looked around the bedroom that had been mine the past week to make sure I hadn't left anything behind. Since I had nothing valuable, that made it easy. Just my heart. Do you have to exaggerate, Tori? Even McCoy's reprehensible sense of humor was rubbing off on me. I had already laundered my borrowed clothes and put them back in the closet. Someday, I would make sure to send some clothes here, so that someone else in a similar situation could have something to tide them over. I stuck my hand in the pocket of the clean server uniform and felt, to my surprise, a crinkly piece of paper. I took it out and gaped at the $100 bill. McCoy must have come in sometime before we headed to his pop's house yesterday. Gratitude overcame me in waves. McCoy was such a nice guy. Someday, whomever he married would be a lucky girl. It was time to go. I had run out of excuses to delay. I opened the door and walked out to the hallway. The bed and breakfast was quiet. The newlyweds were probably still in bed. I could smell bacon to the rafters. But I'd already decided I would turn down his offer of breakfast. I wanted a quick, easy, and non-messy exit. I came down the stairs feeling self-conscious in the shapeless server uniform. But of course, I couldn't take any of the clothes in the closet. Besides, it wasn't like I needed to impress McCoy, if he even was planning to say goodbye to me. He came out of the kitchen and stopped short at the sight of me. "Good morning. Want some breakfast before you—" "No, thanks." I came forward, swallowing my pride. "Thanks so much for the money. You didn't have to." "Of course I did. I don't see how you could leave here for home. I was going to go a little ways and then call my folks. Well, this way you can be heading home to them as soon as you can." I nodded. Right. We were both quiet, each one trying to think of a way to say goodbye, I suppose. At least I was. "I'd better go," I started. "Are you sure you won't?" he said at the same time. We laughed and I shook my head. I'm sure, but thanks for everything." And then all of a sudden, two things happened. The smoke alarm went off in the kitchen just as a man opened the door to the bed and breakfast and walked in. "Alexander?" I cried out in surprise.
Chapter 27. McCoy. I was torn between going in to turn off the burner and taking a good, long, hard look at my rival for the girl I loved. The bacon won out, which was good that I attended to it. It had started a fire all across the backsplash of the oven. "Holy cow," I said, snatching the pan and making it all worse. The handle was so hot that I dropped it in a clatter, spilling fat all over the surface, feeding flames that flared into my face. I was pretty sure my eyebrows had just gotten burned off. "Oh no!" Behind me, Tori had come in. I waved her away, coughing into the smoke that now billowed all around me. "Get out, Tori, it's too far gone." I felt horrible. Althea had entrusted the bed and breakfast to me, and here I was, burning it to the ground. But first things first. I called the fire department, and within minutes their siren blared outside, heralding a crew's arrival. We all waited outside as the firefighters streamed inside. Our newlywed guests were in bathrobes, holding each other close. I wished I could hold Tori close, but her boyfriend was there, along with the pastor from church. "Pastor Gary," I greeted him. "What brings you here?" "He brought me here to my love," Alexander said, looking at Tori much like one would look at a piece of art, or a vintage car. The pastor brought his hands together. "I had seen the young lady in the congregation and recognized her." He held up a newspaper. "Why, she's a missing heiress." I took the paper from his hand and skimmed the first few lines. "Victoria Sinclair, heiress to a Texas oil billionaire, ran away from home. She's suspected to have taken a bus west. The family is issuing a reward to anyone who could give the police her whereabouts." "Glad to be of assistance," the pastor told Alexander. "I'm off unless you need anything else." "You will be hearing from my assistant," Alexander promised him. "I was on my way home," Tori told Alexander. "You could have just waited for me." "But of course I would come to get you," Alexander said. He gazed at her in confusion. "Aren't you glad to see me?" She didn't look it, but of course that could have just been wishful thinking. Alexander was good-looking in a banker sort of way. His dark brown hair was slicked back. All he needed was a pipe and slippers. For a young guy, he looked stodgy. "I can't leave now," Tori said. "I have to stick around and help with the cleanup." Alexander stared at her. "Cleanup? But my dear, certainly you are above that. Let these people take care of the fire. Now come on, let's go." He pulled at her elbow. "No." She stepped out of his reach, her eyes stormy. My heart exulted. Was she going to stay? "Not yet," she amended. "When I'm good and ready." "Very well." Alexander adjusted his suit, glaring at me as though he was now realizing I might have something more to do with her decision than he imagined. For a few minutes I took care of the questions from the fire crew. They also encouraged me to take photos for insurance purposes. "And how's your head?" one of them asked me. "Fine, thanks." I looked at him in confusion. "How did you know?" The firefighter whose tag on his uniform said Eric grinned. "We'd come in before when you fell and got that goose egg." "Oh, right." After they left, I expected Tori to leave too. Instead, she followed me inside. The fire had gutted the kitchen, and Tori cried out as we surveyed the scene. "McCoy," she said, reaching for my hand. Her touch felt good. It gave me some comfort. What a horrible day it was turning out to be. "You going to be okay?" she asked softly. I turned and debated whether or not to let her see into my soul. Of course I wouldn't be okay. I wanted her to stay. But for her sake, I needed to be strong, and I wasn't even thinking of the fire. I masked my need. Yes, of course. Go. I squeezed her hand and let go. Have a good life. For a moment, I thought she looked disappointed, like she'd wanted a different answer. But like me, she squared her shoulders, opting to be brave. With a little nod, she went with Alexander into his Cadillac, without a backward glance at me.
Chapter 28. Tori. Alexander took me to the airport, where his private plane made short work of flying us home. Within 2 hours, we were touching down onto the tarmac, whisked away by limo to my family's ranch. As we drove down familiar highways, I thought of how dry Texas looked compared to Colorado. They were beautiful in different ways, but I liked Colorado better with its mountains. And maybe a certain cowboy. The limo entered my family's estate, the gates closing behind us, then coasted down our long driveway. Our 20-room ranch house loomed ahead. My parents stood at the elegant front portico paved with bricks imported years before from Italy. "Daddy! Mama!" I fell into their open arms. Daddy's eyes were wet and Mama was sobbing. I felt a tinge of remorse because I hadn't missed them all that much, but it felt good to be home. They led me into the house where a meal of my favorite foods had been prepared, served in my sweet sitting room. I wasn't really hungry, but I ate mostly to make Mama feel good. She kept looking at me and turning to Daddy with a grateful smile. Luckily, they didn't press me with questions, which I was grateful for. I wasn't ready to process my feelings. I was glad to be home, but missing Sunny Ridge, something fierce. I was glad to see my parents, but was of dual mind about Alexander, sitting there like he deserved a prize for bringing me home. I ate in silence while they filled me in on what had gone on the past week in their wealthy circle. I listened politely, feeling exhausted at the prospect that I would have to endure such talk at the country club once I was Alexander's wife, and then guilt stabbed at me because I knew I was one of the lucky ones. "I need to get back to work," Alexander announced, making me feel pretty special. But he did at least lean over and kiss me on the cheek. I thought maybe I would feel a slight racing of the heart, some excitement at his nearness, but I only felt a detached interest that while I was gone this past week, he had gotten a shorter haircut. I clutched at his arm. "What happened at the engagement party?" He smirked. "You mean where you tried to play switcheroo with Amanda?" "You knew her name?" His gaze faltered, as though he was embarrassed to be caught knowing the peasants. "Of course I asked her. The police cross-examined her, too, to make sure she wasn't involved in a kidnapping scheme." "You didn't." "We wanted to cover all our bases. But anyway, you're here now, and that's all that matters." He kissed the top of my head. "We'll talk some more about our wedding when you're rested." Daddy and Mama hugged me, and then I was left mercifully alone. After a long moment, I mustered up the energy to get up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling French windows that overlooked the horses at pasture. I used to consider this place my haven. I thought I had been happy here. But looking out the window, I could only think of a pasture, a bus ride from here, where I came alive for the first time in a long time.
Chapter 29. McCoy. Miracle of miracles, Althea didn't go ballistic over the fire after they arrived from their long drive mid-afternoon. She walked around in the kitchen with these ridiculous Mickey Mouse ears and a California tan, put an arm around my shoulder and said, "Thank goodness you all were safe." I hugged her back. "I am so sorry." "Things happen," she shrugged. "What I want to know is what distracted you enough that you let bacon burn at the stove? That isn't like you." "Well," I rubbed my nape, "I suspect it had something to do with a woman." Winnie had come into the kitchen. "Welcome back, Althea. McCoy, what did you do here?" Now, Althea said like a mother hen, shaking her mane of brown hair. "Don't you start on him." She raised an eyebrow at me. "What's this about a woman, though?" Sheldon came in with the kids then, freezing at the doorway. "What the? McCoy!" His voice boomed in the gutted room. Everyone listened in silence as I recounted what happened. And yes, I admitted, I might have been distracted by Tori. Which of course meant I had to explain her, too. By the time I was done, Sheldon had lost his patience. He snapped at the children to go to their rooms and unpack. "It's not their fault," Althea soothed him. "Yes, you're right. Sorry, kids," he called out after them. "But it sure is the fault of this fella." He looked at me pointedly. "Accidents happen," Althea said. "Remember that time when Bubbles fell in the hole and we had to go rescue her?" The aforementioned dog was sitting on the carpet just outside the kitchen, watching her humans talk. "If it weren't for that, we wouldn't be together." Sheldon reluctantly nodded and then glared at me. "Did this fire help you win the girl?" I blew out a breath. "Nope." "Serves you right." "Sheldon," Althea warned. "I'm going to order pizza," he said, leaving me with the women. "So," Althea said, "what did I miss?" "A lot," Winnie declared. "I'm going to take care of the chickens," I said, and left them to gossip. The next day, Mom's death anniversary, I met up with my brothers and Pops and went over to the cemetery overlooking town. Pops held a little colorful pinwheel in his hand and seemed to walk a little slower. "Tater'll drop off her artwork for her grams later," Dylan told him. "That'll be nice. She's a good kid. Your mama loved her." "Yes, she did." Dylan's voice broke. I couldn't even imagine losing his wife first and then his mother within a decade. Pops knelt at Mom's gravesite, clearing overwintered leaves. He took a toothbrush out of his pocket and got the dirt out of the crevices. "Here," Patrick offered. "Let me." "No," Pop said. "I got this." We watched him do this little service for our mother at her grave, reminding me of all the times when it seemed that the only person in the world that could make Pop soften was Mom's quiet words. As a photographer, she was always the one on the other side of the lens, but it had gotten too hard in her older age and with arthritis for her to grip the camera. But that quiet way of observing stayed with her, even without her lens. She captured a lot more than the rest of us did, just by noticing details. I missed her. "Want to offer a prayer?" Pops turned to Heath. "Me?" Heath stared, clearly shocked. I don't know that he'd ever offered to pray in his older years. He still attended church and all, but Mom worried about him. "Yes, you," Pops insisted. "Mom would like to hear you say it." "Okay," Heath said. He bowed his head and offered a prayer. It was simple and direct, like Heath was with everything, unsentimental, but it was a good one. He prayed for the family, our pets, our home. He thanked God that Sheldon's bed and breakfast was spared and that our small town had firefighters. And he said he was grateful for Mom's memory, that she never gave up on us even though maybe some other mother might have sooner. "Thank you, son," Pops said, laying a hand on Heath's shoulder. Pops turned to me. "Did Tori get home okay?" "I don't know." "She hasn't called or anything?" "No." I tried to keep my voice even. "I don't think she'll be calling. Patrick and Heath glanced at me. I was sure they would look smug, but they actually had the decency to look a little somber. Too bad. Pops turned back to Mom's grave marker, the pinwheel going merrily in the breeze. I liked her a lot. I thought of Mom and how she was always excited when I brought a girl home from football games or just to hang out. I wished she had met Tori. As I watched the pinwheel go, I was pretty sure she knew about Tori and was smiling down at me from heaven. We left the cemetery shortly after, with Pops calling me to let the others walk ahead. Listen, son, I don't know why I'm compelled to tell you this, but here goes. I think you made a big mistake letting that girl go. Tori? I stared at Pops. Yes? Who else was I talking about? Your chicken girlfriends? He cackled at his joke. Tori and you seem to get along good, just in that short while I watched you at dinner. Best of all, she got along with the family. Sorry, Pops. I can't go around choosing my wife based on whether or not she gets along with the family. I shoved my hands deeper into my pockets. It helps, though. Don't you think that crossed her mind? That she should stay because she liked the family? Well, yes. That's not how love works, Pops, I pointed out. She actually chose someone over me, was the deal. Winnie says that she only went back to the guy because she didn't think you liked her. Winnie said that? Of course, it may have been a hopeless case, especially since you told her how you feel. I actually didn't, I admitted. Pop's mouth hung open. You had the girl right there and then, and you didn't tell her how you felt? How could I, Pops? I shook my head in frustration. She wanted to marry another man. But if she had known how you felt, that wouldn't have been fair, I said. I'd have been messing with her heart. Or given her another choice. I kept my hands in my pocket. I honestly don't think it would matter. Pops kind of smiled to himself. Do you know how your mother chose to marry me? You proposed? Well, that too. But I had to tell her how I felt. We were friends for the longest time. I was sure scared of being honest and possibly losing her. Pop smiled. Sometimes, son, it's scary to be honest with our feelings. But girls aren't mind readers, or rather, heart readers. And yes, I know she could still reject you. Then again, she could welcome you with open arms. I started to debate Pops, but he only held up a hand. Just think about it, is all I advise.
Chapter 30. Tori. I learned my lesson, Alexander said. Will you forgive me? We were sitting poolside with clouds overcast and a bit of chill in the air, but with the pool water heated, it didn't matter a great deal. Besides, this was a lot warmer than Colorado, where I left my heart. I nibbled on peanuts as I lowered my sunglasses and studied Alexander. He had taken his shades off, too, and was looking at me like a repentant boy. The past 2 days, he had been nothing but attentive, as though he had truly learned his lesson, especially to not take me for granted. I can't stay mad at you forever, I said, while still maintaining a pout. He smiled his Clark Kent smile. Thank you, Tori. I know when you first got back, you said we ought to wait to talk marriage. Yes, my anxiety returned. I think it's time to talk about it again. I put my sunglasses back on. I didn't want to answer him right away, though I had been thinking about this. After I'd left Sunny Ridge, I had waited for some sign from McCoy. But as I had expected, nothing came. No phone call, no letter, nothing. As the days went by, my heart started to harden, and Alexander became more and more agreeable to me, especially since he was so sweet. Maybe in a week's time, Alexander added. I sat up straighter. A week? Why the rush? Why, it'll be Valentine's Day. Besides, what are we waiting for? For me to fall in love with you? For a certain cowboy to come and declare himself? For the chicken to cross the road and get to the other side? I don't know. Then in that case, this is a good time. I have a huge corporate merger in 2 weeks or so that will tie me up for a bit. So that was what this was all about. You'll up and leave me as a newlywed to go to this merger? I wouldn't, of course. I will make time for you, us. It's just a bit more stressful. I was being difficult. What did it matter, 1 week from now or 6 months? McCoy wasn't going to come for me. Alexander, on the other hand, wanted me. Really, my prospects could be far, far worse. I found myself saying, "Yes, I will marry you." Alexander practically spit out his cocktail. "What did you say?" "I said I would, darling." Alexander knelt on the pool pavers. "You have made me the happiest man on earth." He kissed my hand several times and puckered up with his eyes closed. It wasn't fair, but I thought of a certain cowboy with a nice tan, helping me clean up after some eggs, leaning forward and kissing me until I was dizzy. Alexander's kiss was brief and chaste. There were no sparks, but maybe that would come later. "I'm going to talk to your father right away." Alexander froze. "Wait. You aren't going to run away this time, are you?" "I won't run away this time." My voice sounded lifeless, like I wouldn't have energy to run off even if I wanted to. "Stay," Alexander grinned. "Stay." I felt like a good dog. To reward myself, I popped a peanut in my mouth.
Chapter 31. McCoy. Valentine's Day, a week later. My truck sputtered to a stop at the only hotel open in Texas, it seemed, what with Sunny Ridge's homegrown cowboy Eli Hawk in town for a concert. The others in the truck stirred and woke up. Patrick yawned beside me and rubbed his eyes. Winnie, bleary-eyed in the rearview mirror, said, "Are we there yet?" Patrick opened his window, letting a blast of warm air in. "Heavens, I do believe so. Winter passed this place over. Not sure if that's altogether good." 14 hours later, and we had arrived in Tori's Texas hometown. The city proper was a lot bigger than I thought it would be, with tall corporate buildings and concrete everywhere. Her family's ranch was in the outskirts, but this was the closest hotel. Winnie insisted that we at least stay and freshen up before I go and see Tori. I hoped Tori would like my surprise. Like it or not, here I was. We checked into our separate hotel rooms. I was so tired I practically fell asleep in the shower until Patrick started pounding on my door. I told him to give me 10 more minutes and got dressed. "Good." Winnie eyed me as I joined them in the hallway. "Much more presentable." We grabbed a quick bite to eat at a burger joint next door, and then it was time for me to visit Tori, to reveal my feelings like Pop suggested. I had wrestled with the decision for days, but the truth kept staring me in the face. Tori deserved knowing the truth. "Nervous?" Winnie asked me as I drove the roads using directions from the gas station. "Nah," I lied. "I would be too," Patrick said. "What do you know about declaring feelings?" Winnie said. "I tell you I love you all the time," Patrick objected. "That's not the same as making a grand gesture." The two were at it again. Winnie obviously wanted them to get married, but maybe they'd be better off not. But it wasn't my place to meddle. We drove for another hour eastward until we came to landmarks we were warned about. "Does that look like the right number to you?" I asked Patrick. I held up the numbers on the piece of paper in full view of the ones on the imposing log posts. "I think so." Winnie confirmed it, so we turned down that driveway. Each minute brought me more anxiety. I wondered aloud, what if her family has security posted everywhere and they arrest me for trespassing? "You're going to the front door, genius," Patrick said. "That sounds easier," I conceded. Winnie touched my shoulder. "She'll be happy to see you." "I hope you're right." "And if she isn't," Patrick said, "we'll have wasted all this driving for nothing." "Patrick," Winnie warned. As we got closer to buildings in the middle of nowhere, we were greeted by a sea of cars. "Odd," I said. "Is Eli's concert here?" But then I saw signs of something else, something I hadn't counted on. Winnie said the words out loud. "It's Tori and Alexander's wedding, holy smokes." I gripped the steering wheel. "I'm too late." "Only if you don't hurry," Winnie said. "Hurry!" I circled the parking lot, but all spots close to the ranch house's entrance were full. The only thing to do was to park clear outside a marked area and to run over to the wedding as fast as I could. But was I already too late? "I have an idea," Winnie said. "Patrick, drive the car and drop McCoy off." "What?" my brother squawked. "He can just walk." "The reason he's even doing this is because you and Heath talked him into not declaring to Tori," Winnie pointed out. "Fine." To me, he said, "Drive down to the entrance and I'll take over from there." "Thanks, guys." "And hurry," Winnie shouted. I put the truck in park, left the engine running and the door open, then sprinted down a footpath accented with massive floral garlands on miles of railing. From that spot, I could see people converged in an open area on cloth-covered chairs, and a groom and bride standing in front, facing an officiator. I was too late. But what if I wasn't? What would I say? I heard a noise behind me. Turning, I caught sight of two men in suits and dark sunglasses running after me. "Hey, you!" one of them said. "Stop!" I didn't.
Chapter 32. Tori. "If anyone objects to this marriage," the pastor said, "speak now or forever hold your peace." In my dream world, this is where someone, preferably McCoy, would stand up and say, "I object." But there would be no such objection. Within a minute, I would be married to Alexander. "I object!" My imagination was still in overdrive. I shook it to rid myself of that silly dream. But then I realized that someone indeed was shouting those words, as a collective gasp rippled through the crowd and we all turned to look behind us. McCoy Brown was running towards me, chased by two security guards. "McCoy!" I breathed. Alexander growled, "What is that buffoon doing?" "Objecting," I said in a voice of wonder. McCoy reached me, his face shiny with sweat. "I'm not too late, am I?" he asked just as the guards tackled him. "Let him go," I told them. "Daddy, please." They looked at Daddy, who nodded. McCoy straightened his shirt and got to his feet, facing me once again. "You are too late, too," Alexander said. "Get out of here or we'll throw you out for trespassing." "Not until I tell Tori what I came here to say," McCoy said, standing tall. Everyone looked at me. "Yes," I said, dazed. "Let him speak." I ignored the waves of animosity flowing from Alexander to his rival for my attention. "I never told you how I truly felt," McCoy said, looking into my eyes. "Tori, I love you." The audience gasped as my head spun. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I overheard you telling Winnie that you wanted to go back to Alexander." Alexander sucked his breath. "See?" I shook my head. "I only said that because you had told Heath that it wasn't worth it, that our relationship wasn't worth pursuing." "I said that?" McCoy said, frowning. "You heard wrong. That's not what I meant. And even if I did, I've since been reminded that I needed to take a chance. I needed to tell you what I truly feel." He paused and reached for my hand. "Tori, I know it sounds improbable, but I fell in love with you the moment I laid eyes on you, in that cute server uniform." The audience swooned loudly. "Will you all stop that?" Alexander snarled. McCoy blushed. "Dare I ask, do you feel the same way?" It was my turn to confess. "I fell in love with you when I saw how cute you were with Judith." McCoy's eyes lit up as his hand squeezed mine. "Even though you wanted to kill her?" "What?" Alexander bellowed. "Who's Judith?" "I was just threatening her," I told McCoy. "I didn't really mean it. I know, I always knew that you had a sweet spot for chickens." "And cowboys who build chicken coops," I added. "That too," McCoy smiled. "And then when we kissed, I knew we had something special." I was pretty sure Alexander was glowering even more so, but my eyes were on McCoy. "I realized that too," I said, despite the fact I was such a brat. "Yeah, that you were." We exchanged hopeful glances. "I tried to not fall in love with you." He tightened his grip. But I could about do that as give up chickens. I blinked back tears as the crowd sniffled too. McCoy knelt on one knee. Tori, I'm not rich, but if you agree to be my wife, I will take care of you and make sure you are happy for the rest of forever. Wait a minute, Alexander said, looking like he wanted to punch McCoy. Alexander Grakos, Mama interjected, let my daughter answer. But you don't know him from Adam, Alexander sputtered. Mama sat up straighter. I have heard enough. I've also seen my daughter's reaction to know that this is the real deal, not the sham you have with her. Alexander was rendered speechless for a change. Oh, Mama, I said, thank you. Mama's expression softened. You're welcome, sweetie. I did wonder if you'd met someone in Colorado. I'd never seen you more happy and miserable all at the same time. She turned to Daddy. And you better not object if you don't want your daughter running away again. Daddy stared at her and then at me, in shock. I looked deep into McCoy's eyes, right into his soul. Yes, McCoy, I will marry you. McCoy kissed my hands and got to his feet with a huge smile. He opened his arms and I ran into them, feeling safe and loved. Then he pulled back and kissed me. I didn't know which way was up or down, and I had forgotten we still had an audience. That is until people started clapping and cheering. Everyone except for Alexander. Can I say something? I asked McCoy. Of course. I turned to Alexander. I'm sorry it didn't work out between us. I should have done the kind thing and told you no more firmly the first time. But then I wouldn't have met this wonderful man, McCoy. Alexander's eyes pivoted to his rival, his glare intensifying. To McCoy, I said, you are the sweetest, kindest man I've ever met. When I'm with you, you make me feel like a princess. You make me feel loved. And that's always what I'd wanted, to marry for love. We hugged and kissed to cheers from the crowd. So what now? McCoy asked. Do we make our exit? Patrick and Winnie are waiting with the getaway car. Patrick and Winnie are over here, Winnie said, drawing attention to themselves. Way to go, McCoy. Patrick actually came here with you? I said, not believing my eyes. He felt awful that he tried to talk me out of dating you. Sorry, my bad. Patrick tipped his cowboy hat. Wait, I turned to McCoy. Did you fly? Remember, I don't fly, he winced, so we had to drive. I tried to get here as soon as I could. Maybe you and I could drive back and get married in Sunny Ridge. Daddy had come up to the stage and loomed behind McCoy. You will do no such thing, young man. Sir? McCoy whirled around, still holding my hand and standing slightly in front of me, protective. Daddy's stern expression gave way to a smile. You have my blessing to marry my daughter. Might as well. We're all gussied up, good anyway. Besides, nothing beats Valentine's Day as an anniversary. McCoy beamed. Thank you, sir. I promise to take good care of your daughter. Daddy nodded in approval. You had better, or else. I squeezed McCoy's arm. We can fly on our honeymoon. McCoy visibly swallowed, then smiled. Anything for you. Alexander sputtered. But what about... Daddy stared him down. Why don't you sit before you hurt yourself? Alexander looked around for a chair, unsuccessfully, until a server came up with one. She looked familiar, and I did a double take. Amanda waved cheekily at me and McCoy, giving us the thumbs up. Who's that? McCoy asked. A friend, I simply said, waving back. After our marriage ceremony, we got McCoy changed into a nice suit for pictures. Then we kissed some more. This time, no one objected nor interrupted. And we're still kissing to this day. This has been A Cowboy for Love, Riverdale Ranch Romance Book Number 5, written by Jewel Allen, narrated by Melissa Connell and Scott Rose. Copyright 2021 by Jewel Allen. Production copyright by Jewel Allen.